Hey everybody, welcome to the Can't Post podcast where we discuss hot takes that you wouldn't normally post on social media and then we post them ourselves because we like abuse. My name's Waylon, I'm your host, and today we're going to have a good friend of mine, John. He's also a DM, he's been DMing for a bit. I got him here online where hopefully we're going to talk about some D&D stuff, Wizards of the Coast stuff, anything in between. Keep it D&D related, just for you guys, but that should be good. Yeah, that wasn't that bad, right? I did that.
Wasn't bad at all. That was really good. That was good. I like that intro. That was good intro.
I could hear you trying not to laugh, but
What?
maybe.
No, I was actually listening to what you were saying, and I was closing my imaginary mind eye, going, yeah, I can see me listening to this.
Look, coming soon to your Spotify near you. No. I don't have the royalties for that.
Radio or wherever you get your podcast.
We've got iTunes. We've got Spotify. We got SoundCloud. Do people still use SoundCloud?
I don't know. I don't know. I let the machine pick where I get my podcast from. I just say, Google, play me a podcast, and it goes, okay.
I just get everything from Spotify now. So yeah, let's get into D&D before we keep talking about something else again.
Oh, you're recording. Whoops.
Yeah, we're here now. This is in it. We're in it. D&D stuff. Let's go, please, God. Can we do this? Oh, we're so bad at staying on topic.
Tabletop.
Yes, that's a video game. That's a game on Steam.
Tabletop Simulator, one of the most unused or underutilized D&D or DMing tool.
It is though, especially when I first started. I made that YouTube video, the one I have. It's the biggest one I got. It blew up, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, can you answer these questions for me?" And I had tons of people asking questions. I made video after video afterwards, and just the questions just kept coming. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stop for a bit. I can't make anyone happy. I'm crying inside. It was crazy to me to see how many people were like, oh my God, someone's finally talking about making D&D on tabletop. And no one really knew how to do it. I don't know how you started, because I think you were doing it before me and you even met, right? You were DMing on tabletop?
Yeah, well, I first actually started using Roll20. That's what I first started with, but I didn't like it because it was so top down, you know what I mean? So when we first started D&D, we had this crazy idea that we're going to get all the models, we're going to get all the furnishings, we were going to get chests, we were going to get gold piles and all that, and just have the beautiful maps that you'd see on Critical Role and that type of shit. And then we quickly realized that it's a money pit, massive money pit.
Yeah.
Not only a money pit, but it's a storage pit as well. Where the hell are we going to store all that crap?
Yeah, if you ever go and watch some of the stuff from Critical Role where they have an entire room dedicated to shelf on shelf on shelf, and I want it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, same here. So I grew up in a house that didn't have all that stuff. And when I moved over to my now wife's house, her father was well into all the war games. So he had a room dedicated to all war games, and in every single cabinet you could find miniatures, models, everything from Lord of the Rings to World War II to American Civil War and stuff like that. And that was my dream growing up, because previously in the year before that, I went to America to visit a friend's house, and he was big into D&D, and he had a basement full of shit, a basement full of models.
That
and
just
everything
sounds
euphoric.
euphoric.
So for me, it was I want this. This is what I want, but because everything kind of happened and we couldn't do it because we just couldn't have the space because we were doing it in work, I moved over to Roll20 and then quickly realized that Roll20 was really difficult to manage on your own.
Yeah.
Right?
It has a really hard learning curve to it as well.
Yeah, massive learning curve. But it's not only a learning curve for the DM, it's a learning curve for every single player that too. It's not intuitive for a player to learn. There's too many right-click this here, right-click that there, and then do all that type of thing. The one thing that it does do very well, and I'll credit it to this, the one thing that I'm still trying to figure out on tabletop is the light sources. And I think me and you have talked about this before, right? It's the ability to have your characters, even in Fog of War, or the player characters, be able to see exactly 30 foot in front of them or 10 foot in front of them at dim light, and then further at low light, and then further at nothing.
That's what I
Well,
would love for tabletop
yeah,
to implement.
Roll20 has that. They have that system. They have a dynamic lighting system, right? And then there's other things that are coming out recently as well that give you that type of lighting, but obviously don't give you the bells and whistles that tabletop allow. Which
There's another one too. I want to bring it up while we're talking about it because Roll20 is like the bigger one. Like it's basically the mainstream one you hear about the most. But there's one more. I have it on my Steam somewhere. I don't want to waste too much time looking for it, but oh god, it's on Steam, but it's like it's the same thing as Roll20, but it's something else.
You keep looking for it while I continue to talk about it, right? So we used
Alright.
we used Roll20, okay? And when I had it up, I had to set up on a projector at work, right? So because we used to play D&D in work, there was 12 of us playing D&D. So I had it up on a projector.
How'd that go? By the way?
It was hard. It was really difficult. The main reason was because we were all new to D&D, right?
Oh,
so so I was new to DMing. This was about 5, maybe 6 years ago now. We were all new to D&D. Didn't really know how combat worked. Didn't really know how to do everything. I did all my research. I printed out the sheets that say this is what you do in combat. These are your phases, your stages, all that type of stuff. What you can do, what you can't do, and that type of stuff. But these were also people that were affected by the Mercer effect. They had the expectations of being able to do absolutely anything they want with little to no consequences because it was cool. The rule of cool was dominant.
Yeah, that's a really big thing you have to kind of take into account. There's a lot of people like they watch Critical Role and they assume that's D&D as a whole, and that is D&D. That's what they're playing, but it's like every table's different, and you can't assume that going in that you're about to get you found your own Matthew Mercer. I can't be him, bro. I can't.
I tried in the first campaign, which is why I've got great respect for you with your campaign. Is that your campaign is yours, the world. I had tried that. I had tried it, and it fell flat on his face because my players couldn't take cues because they were new players. And I think my players were frustrated because I couldn't push them in the right direction in a dynamic manner that was acceptable for them to be able to be part of what they wanted to be, which was be at the Critical Role table, right?
Yeah.
So we used Roll20 for this, but we quickly realized that Roll20 was difficult because I had to do every single thing myself. I had to move players. I then had to move my monsters as well. They were rolling initiative on the table, but I was still using pen and paper at that point in time, having to write down initiative roll and write down all the other stuff as well. So HP for monsters, and I had to print out sheets of all the stat blocks and stuff like that, and it was a fucking nightmare. So much to keep track on.
It's so much.
Yeah. So
especially since the way you're doing it, where you're doing it on like a big like screen in the middle, so you don't have like that DM screen that the Roll20 kind of gives you, where you can hide behind it and do your own stuff and have your monsters there and everything. You don't have to like let the player see. That was always my thing. Is like, if I ever took my tabletop game that I'm playing right now, like on Tabletop Simulator, I took it home, I'd have to probably do what you did and put it on a screen, but then all of a sudden they can see everything that they're not used to be able to see.
Yeah.
I don't know how to deal with that. Like, do I have to like have my own laptop in front of me with all my stuff, and like I can't roll in front of, like, it's gonna be really weird. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do it. So I don't even know how you, like, that just seems like a lot.
Well, it was a lot, and one of the things that I had to do every single time was I had to call people out on the metagaming. I had to call them out on it, and I had to be like, no, you can't do that because you don't know what's around the corner. You don't know that there's monsters around the corner. Tell me right now the reason you are currently hiding around the corner here. Tell me the reason that you're holding your action in case something comes around the corner when you have no idea what's coming around.
You don't know what's around that corner, bro.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know. The only reason why you want to hold your action is because you can see a model there. You can see the image of what I have as a creature, and you're scared by it.
That is why. That's a big thing. That's a big thing. Something I did take away from Matthew Mercer was how he doesn't bring out a battle board until it starts.
Mhm.
And I used to be really against that until just recently, like a few months back. And now I don't bring out a board. I won't summon one on tabletop at all until combat is like starting.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I do that as well. I do that as well. Obviously, the Strahd campaign's a little bit different because you need to visualize the rooms that you're currently in, right? It's better to
Yeah.
visualize the rooms that you're in. But when it comes to combat, I don't put pieces on the board. I don't put pieces on until initiative has started. Like
Yeah.
that is the biggest thing because then people go, "Oh, that's what's happening. That's where they are. Oh, we're in trouble."
Another issue I have a lot with mine was like not even like players like metagaming per se, but mostly like if I brought a board out when their miniatures were on it, they felt inclined to like move around and constantly like move their miniatures to like where they want them to be and what's going on. And if I ever said roll initiative, you'd see everyone's hands quickly move to like the board and they put their characters where they want them to be, but not where they were. And
That's actually very funny that you say that because yeah, that's happened to me a few times when we first started as well with the 12 people. Was that when I asked them to roll initiative, it was, oh no, then I wouldn't be there if there was a fight. I'd be back here, and I'd be like, no, that's where you moved.
that's
Like
where you were,
that's
my
that's
man.
where you moved. Yeah, that's exactly what you said. That's exactly what you did. You moved your piece over to there, and now that you're worried that you're gonna die because you've made a mistake, you're trying to revert
Live it
back.
and learn from it, man. Just live and
Yeah.
learn from it.
The same thing happens with traps and stuff like that too. The same reason why I've never put traps, chests, and stuff like that onto the map is because well, the same thing with D&D. I mean, a chest can be literally anything from a booby trap to a death trap to a mimic to an illusion to anything. It can be literally anything that you want to. And the players should understand that and know that too. And if they don't know that, then they, like you said, they need to learn from it. If they touch it and it bites them, well, maybe be scared from chests from now on.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe be
perfect
like
example is
the last time I
Ian.
tried that with a chest, it bit me. So maybe I should poke it at first this time. You know,
Yeah,
like learn
exactly.
from it.
Yeah, let's use mage hand and let's open it from a distance, see what happens. Oh, it opened? Oh, look, something shot out of it. Guys, this chest is trapped.
That's why.
Can we get a rogue in here, please?
That's why with a big thing with me is if I'm playing with a bunch of new players, I don't have none of my traps are deadly. At best, they'll wound you a bit, but none of them are fatal. They're nowhere near fatal. Now after like the party I have now that I've been running with for like 4 years, I send fatal shit. I'm actively trying to murder them. And I have to because if I'm not, they're not getting like, there's no tension for them anymore. If I'm not upping the stake that high, they're like, this is easy. This is no problem whatsoever.
See, that makes a lot of sense for veteran players. It makes a lot of sense for veteran players, which is I started taking the route that like you mentioned, like every single trap is more of a setback trap. So if you have a look at the DMG, there's 3 levels of traps. There's setback, dead, dangerous, setback. What is it? Trivial, setback, and fatal or deadly. I think it is.
Yeah, and they had them like described as like trivial is basically nothing really. It wastes time really. Setback means they have to expend something like heals or potions to kind of get back the HP they lost, or they have to use a spell somewhat to like cure blindness that was caused.
Yep.
And then deadly is like it almost killed them.
Yeah, exactly that. So what I then started doing was that the 2 easier traps, like I keep the damage the same and I keep everything else, but the deadly trap, I wouldn't change the damage. But what I'd have a lot of descriptive indicators to tell the team and the party that you are potentially coming to a deadly trap. And the perfect example I had from this was they opened up a room before with a small pinprick, a black pinprick in the middle of the room floating there, and everything kind of like zooming into it, almost like a black hole, right? Mm-hmm. Straight away, as a person from D&D, you're like, that's a fucking sphere of annihilation right there. That is a fucking sphere of annihilation. Don't go anywhere near it.
That's something I want to be involved with right there.
Yeah, exactly. There's a big green demon face with an open mouth. Let's climb through the mouth. You know what I mean?
I'm good. I'm not going to be over here. You guys have fun.
So with new players, you can guarantee they don't know what that means. There's like, oh, it's a big black hole. Oh, it must be magic of some kind. So you have to describe, well, there's rats underneath it all. And then one scurries out and literally gets sucked into the black hole and it's gone. It's just disappeared, you know? And like, it's in a locked room behind a door that was locked. So you have to purposely get into this. Now you find this sphere of annihilation, and behind of it, it's hiding something. It's like, this could be deadly.
And the rat being sucked up should have been enough of a clue to be like, yeah, this is not safe. This is
exactly.
going. So, even if that doesn't kill me, that's taking me somewhere without my party. That's scary.
Yeah. So for people who don't play D&D, those very small little descriptors from the DM that sound benign, like that sound just like a small description in the story, should be clicking in the back of your mind and saying, he's telling me something here. I need to be careful. I need to be aware. Like the books, for example, Curse of Strahd books and stuff like that, the descriptions that they give you, they're meant to be described. They're meant to be read the exact way that they're written. Why? Because the players need to know exactly what they are.
Mm-hmm. It's important.
They need to know that. Yeah.
And that falls a little bit on the DM. Because like it's like you're making your own stuff. Like some DMs do lack the ability to tell to tell warnings without giving it completely away. There was one person I played with a long time ago. We were about to go fight a Medusa. And typically what I would do, how I would now, looking back, hindsight's 2020. I don't want to judge him. He was a DM. All DMs are precious little creatures. But how I would describe a Medusa and how I assume most people would is like if I was prepping my party about to fight a Medusa, I would start it off kind of slow. So it'd be stuff like the grass seems a bit as if it's like dying in the area. It's kind of weird. It looks like you're walking into a place where it's not very fertile. And then you get a bit further in, say you see what looks to be a lot of chunks of granite and stone laying around amongst themselves, just kind of like scattered amongst themselves. And they get pretty close. I'd be like, where you see what looks to be statues created, very, very well carved statues of humans and elves and dwarves. And you look at them and if they I want to inspect one, I'm gonna give them an inspection check, and I'd go into really good detail. Like it's almost crazy. Whoever made this is a master craftsman, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And that's about as good as I'd give you. Like that I'd stop there. At that point, you in your head, you should be. But also, the problem with that is that's me assuming you know what a Medusa is.
Yes, but at the same time, you've also got people that know basilisks in D&D.
True. It could be a basilisk.
Exactly the same thing. Yeah, exactly. Like you know that's there. But then, exactly what we're talking about with beginners and vets. A veteran, right? A veteran would quite possibly go, "This is petrification. This isn't a statue. This is a person," and then they'd be grabbing somebody for a greater restoration. They'd be grabbing somebody to remove the petrification from them. It's that type of stuff. I had actually placed these things in a lot of campaigns that I've run in order for people to actually bring that out, because there's this one beautiful point in time where I was watching another one of Mercer's run things from D&D Beyond. I think it was when they were doing the Giants. What's that giant campaign book called? Storm King's Thunder.
Storm King's Thunder, yeah.
Yeah. One of the player characters that he introduced was Calliope. And Calliope, being being a D&D, a big shot, in the actual game, she was a statue in the middle of a gold dragon's pool, okay? And one of the players just happened to cast Greater Restoration, and he brought on an actual person to play that character. And that person knew exactly what he was doing with that character, had the character sheet and stuff like that, but it didn't seem planned. But as a DM, I'm going, that had to be fucking planned, because there's no way that he would have invited that person there out of his main work schedule to sit there on the hopes that they fucking cast one spell on him.
Yeah, that was that felt a little too kind of shoehorned in.
Yeah, exactly.
In my opinion, that felt kind of planned.
But without movie magic, without what we know, you don't get that. You don't.
And here, this is about to be a bit of a rant, Matthew Mercer, and I don't want to rant about Matthew Mercer. I love that man to death. I watch Critical Role. Please don't hate me. But one of the things that always kind of like, I really do believe that Matthew Mercer is just a really amazing DM, and that campaign isn't planned. I don't think it's planned. I really don't. I know there's an argument to be had. People say it is. I really don't think it is. But whenever they just randomly go off in this one direction, they're in the campaign 2, there's a fight breaks out, and they take a boat. There's no way he had that planned. He might have had it in the back of his head, like, oh, they may take a boat. But they ran from not in the docks to the docks, and then stole a boat, and then took the boat out into the ocean, had a fight on the boat.
Was that part of the same episode where they basically tried to sink the boat?
I think they tried to sink it first, actually.
Yeah, I remember an episode like that, and I remember him because to give credit to him, because he was using Sea of the Saltmarsh book at the time, and using like the rules from Saltmarsh, those ship combats and stuff like that. But he gave them like a 12% chance to scuttle the ship, and they did it. And he literally picked up a pile of notes and went, "Well."
Yeah, I remember that. That was Taliesin. So a boat was coming in from behind them. They were trying to like Matthew in his head's like, okay, here comes those ship combats. I've got the shit ready. I'm gonna hand it up to everybody. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a cool battle. And Taliesin's like, I cast move water, or I can't remember what the actual spell is, but it's like when you have the ability to control. I think it's actually control water. Yeah. And there's 12% chance to capsize that boat, and he did it. And it's like Matthew was just like, all right, what am I going to do for the extra hour that you guys have now? Because that was supposed to be like an hour of combat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like people can say that it is, there's parts of it that they definitely have to shoehorn in to keep it going. But there are parts of it where you can definitely tell that it is not planned.
If you watch Matthew Mercer's like face when certain things happen, he goes, okay. Like he has like a freak out moment whenever they do something kind of crazy. He's like, oh, okay, I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for that. Yeah. And if you're a DM and if you're just a bystander and you're watching the show and you're enjoying it for what it is, you may not catch that, but a DM is watching that and they know the fear in his eyes right there.
Yeah, I've had it a lot. Like that's why whenever you read on Reddit and stuff like that, one of the biggest advices to DMs is that it's your table, you call it when you want. Like you don't have any prep for that area. I think it was the other night when we were playing I think we were playing Strahd.
With the Amber Temple thing.
Yeah, the Amber Temple, and I was like, guys, I'm gonna have to call it here because I need to research the Amber Temple. I need to look at the Amber Temple and I need to read it because it's an area that I haven't read.
100%.
I've done the same thing to of Annihilation as well. Like they went to Dungrumlon, which is the area of horny toads. If anyone hasn't actually gone there, it's hilarious, absolutely hilarious. Big old boss grown toad man is trying to summon Nung Nung, the goddess, to basically fuck her. It's great.
It's a little racy, but yeah, it's good.
It's great. But they walked into that probably about an hour and a half into the D&D session, and it's not something that I'd had planned. So I was like, guys, I'm gonna have to call it here because I want to give you guys the best experience here of this area.
Like I need to pull back. I need to prep. If it's something like they want to go to a store, or if I don't have it planned, or if they're looking for something in particular, if it's nothing big, I can usually like wing it, which is 90% of what a DM does anyways. Yeah. Like when you guys wanted to like it was something during when we were running Warrior Deep Dragonized, and it was like the second session, I think, or maybe it'd been the first one. I can't remember what exactly y'all did, but I remember my head just like screaming, I don't know what to do. But I can't remember exactly the moment. It's gonna kill me. It'll come back later. But stuff like that, it's like, okay, I can wing it. Yeah, it's fine. No. Just turn the camera off so they don't see the fear in my eyes, and we'll be good.
Yeah. So, like, as a player, right, my biggest hate on a D&D table, right, is a story that's not going anywhere. Right? So I've been part of a campaign that ran for about 2 years. This was after my attempt at the campaign first started, right? And there were sessions that we had that went on for 4 hours of us doing fuck all. And I mean fuck all. Like this was like walking around the town with no meaningful information to what was currently going on in the main story, no side story, no nothing. It was us going around talking to NPCs that had no bearing meaning to anything that was going on, and shopping and buying stuff that we couldn't even afford, and items that were outside of our range of expertise and money and stuff like that. And that happened for 4 hours. And I remember coming home going, God's sake, I really wish I just stayed at home and played some video games or something like that, because it would have been more fun.
Like there needs to be a guidance, and you need to, I'm not telling DMs to like railroad their players, but definitely like provide some kind of direction. Like slightly.
So this is one of the things that I've always done with books, right? And it's something that you guys have had on Strahd, and it's something that I've done for Tomb of Annihilation as well. Like in the books, they don't tell you what NPCs should know, right? Mm-hmm. Some NPCs know certain things, and they tell you that in the books. But it is a world, it's a living world where rumor is huge. It's absolutely huge. So you can guarantee people are going to hear. Yeah. And history is known as well, it's passed down from descendant to descendant, so people know about all this. So does it matter what NPC it comes from, as long as the information is there?
No, I hate the idea that like you have to talk to the very specific NPC or you don't get the very specific answer. I've never enjoyed that about DMing, because I feel like it just harms the players for no reason. It just
yeah, which is where I went wrong in the first campaign. It was kind of like they have to go to this NPC to get this information, it sends them to this person, and then it was like this whole breadcrumb trail thing. And then I quickly realized that okay, if that bread trail doesn't get followed, where the fuck do I go now?
Where do we go?
Where do we go? Which leads to those moments where you're shopping in a town for 4 hours straight, not finding what you want, not doing what you need, And
I can turn that as that example you gave, the whole like if there's no like direction for the DM. There's also that problem. I as a DM have sat and DM'd a table to a group of players. That actually happened just last night, where they had direction, they knew where to go, they knew what to do, they knew they were ready for it. Everything was cleared out. They still spent 2 hours just sitting there talking amongst themselves, and then they finally went to it. They got to in front of it. So to get some concept here, my DM table, and I want to talk to you about something else that happened last night too. This just happened last night, so it's on my mind. I'm a little bugged by it, but basically, so they got teleported to they got teleported right in front of where they need to be, thanks to a friend they made, an ally they made, and something else they were doing. They were able to get quick access to where they needed to be. Finally, that this is a long trip that's been going on for months now, out of game and in game, of them trying to get to this place to locate this item so they can bring it back to the Blackstaff. And they got teleported right in front of it. And look, what they knew the information about it. They knew, okay, it's a mansion. Some dude named Madgoth controls it. Okay, sure, we'll figure it out when we go in. We got this. They get in there. Like I said, they spent like an hour or two talking about it before. And then they get in there, and now they're staring. It's about 60 feet in front of them. It's as tiny as a dollhouse. It's about this big. And what they don't know is that there's a huge circle of a transmutation magic that's making it small. And if anyone goes in that circle, they become small as well. They don't know that. But it's just floating in the air about 60 feet in front of them. And it's like in the middle of a giant crater that goes 90 feet deep. And some of the players have 120 feet dark vision. They immediately see the mansion. They immediately see the crater and how deep it goes. Then they proceed to spend 30 minutes sitting there going, and they even come up with ideas like, I can cast fly, or I can polymorph to like a bird and we can fly, like I can fly someone over there. And then they just stop and they just go silent. And one of the players was like, can we call it? And I'm like, why? We have like 45 minutes left. What do you want to call it for? Almost as if they want to almost as if the same way I want to call it when I don't have things prepped, they want to call it so they can sit there and talk. I know they've got a chat that they don't show me. They got a little Facebook chat group. They talk about, all right, so what's Waylon got planned? What's he gonna do? So I just threw something in front of them that's weird, and they want to talk about it before next session. That's what this is. I'm just like, no, you need to act. Come on, you need to.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is when they don't do it in character. And it's not a case of in character. Like, I don't care if people break their character while they're on the table, but sat around talking about what they're going to do, what challenges that they face and stuff like that. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why I always, whenever there's a new person playing a D&D game with me, is I tell them, make a character that's based on you, that you can be an extended personality of yourself in the game. Because it means that you can be yourself in the game, and you can think as yourself in the game and do what you would do in that situation without having the pressure of acting like a dumb character, of acting like the most intelligent character, of acting like the most wise person on the planet. Like, you don't need that. You don't need that.
And that's definitely a problem, but I don't think that's what this was. I don't even know how to explain what this was, because they were all role-playing in character, and they've been playing these characters for 2 years. They're comfortable in the skin of their characters now. They just felt like, it just kind of felt like they were all scared all of a sudden of this tiny floating like dollhouse in the middle of a crater.
I've had that a lot. I mean, that's one thing that's happened in Strahd a few times, is the lockup of players going, is that going to kill us or not? And then I've had it in Tomb of Annihilation as well, like, especially in Tomb of Annihilation, actually, because the whole premise of Tomb of Annihilation is that people's souls aren't being returned to their bodies. So all the typical necromantic spells that people are used to, Revivify, Resurrection, True Resurrection, stuff like that, isn't working because something is going on in Chult. No spoilers, because it's a fucking brilliant campaign book.
Yeah. Go play Tomb of Annihilation, it's great. If you're a veteran, I don't recommend it for new players, actually. Or new DMs. But if you're a veteran with a veteran group and you haven't played Tomb of Annihilation yet, I don't know what you're doing with your life. It's pretty good.
It's very good. So yeah, the one of them had already died to a rampaging Ankylosaurus. It did double the amount of damage that he had. Poor kid's hit points.
Oh, I love instant killing a player.
And it was accidental as well. Like the way that I was running the Ankylosaurus is that it wasn't doing damage to anybody. It was rampaging and just, rolling around. And if anybody got near it, then it would basically self-defend. But it walked into the kid's space, and then the kid tried to run away. But of course, that Ankylosaurus just did an attack of opportunity because it was like, something's near me. And, slammed him in the chest and just killed him. And then all of a sudden now, everyone's like, we need to protect the squish. We need to protect him. He cannot die again because something is happening, and if he dies, we have to explain a really bad situation to his parents, and we don't want to roleplay them.
Yeah, there's that feeling when you kill a player that the first feeling is like, yes, I finally did it. Especially if they've lived for a long time, and so that first emotion is like, I did. Oh no.
Yes, it worked. This monster has finally done what I wanted it to do, and now it's killed someone, and now all my players are angry to do that.
Oh no. What have I done? Did I go too far? Was it too strong?
It's actually funny because you get the adverse effect of that too. One of our players in the Strahd campaign is making a character that he's trying to make a character that is completely unkillable. That is designed to beat the campaign. Min-max to the fucking balls to the wall as best as possible. The highest AC, the highest dex, the highest HP. Basically just trying to push everything with all of the spells that you can possibly imagine for utilization and damage, to basically be equal to the BBEG in the first couple of levels.
Wait, one of us is doing that in Strahd?
Yeah, one of you is doing it in Strahd.
Who? Because we're getting our asses beat. I'd like you to.
Dan, have you seen Dan's Blade song? So he played a Blade song, fully maxed out when he's in combat. He has an AC of 27.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Now, as a DM, AC doesn't mean fucking balls. Like you just go around that. Like he has stats, he has some decent saving throw stats, but there's some that he's weak on. So you just find monsters that, have those weaknesses.
Yeah, you
or
just
have
throw them in.
and you
And
throw
the player's
'em
gonna get mad about it, but like, I mean, that's what I'm supposed to do. Would you want me to
in. Yeah,
not
exactly.
challenge you? Like, sorry.
Yeah, that's the exact point. Like, you want me to, you need to be challenged, but at the same time, like, each campaign book is different because they have different tonalities. Curse of Strahd, and I think I've mentioned this to you plenty of times before, and it's good that I know that you feel it. You're meant to have the feeling of hopelessness. You're
Yeah,
meant to
you really
feel
are.
you're meant to feel like you cannot do anything here. Like, even the book, although it doesn't necessarily straight up smack you in the face and describe it that way, but like there's a procession of dead adventurers that go from one end of the country to the other end of the country, of people who have tried this like you are doing now, and it's constant every single night, and people see this miles away. Like, if that is an indication of you are out of your depth, you are in a depressed area, you are meant to feel like you cannot win any fight that you are coming up against, then what is it? Like,
And if you like in building I don't know, building a character that kind of defeats all that, what kind of ruins the fun for you. I think
exactly, yeah.
that's while we're on. Let's talk about Curse Strahd for a moment, because like so far we've played through it, and like this is my first playthrough as a player. I've never actually ran Curse of Strahd myself, as you know. I have one. I have a little problem. I got a little bit. I got a tiny little problem.
Dig. I might be able to defend it. I don't know.
I fucking hate that Strahd shows up to save you. I would rather die and just reroll
Right.
characters.
So
I think
there-
that takes
there's a-
away from so much of the tension. Knowing, because like maybe the first or the second time it's okay, but after the third time you're like, okay, well if we get in over our heads, Strahd's gonna show up, so we're fine. I hate that the book does that.
The book doesn't.
Oh, thanks, John.
The book, yeah, you're fucking welcome. And it's not just because of what you do. Is I don't like my players dying from a decision from one person. That's what I don't like. I don't like one person making a decision for every single character. I did that the very first time. The very first time where you opened up the door and you all got fucking blown to smithereens. That second time when we restarted, I was like, I can't let that happen again. Because if I do, that campaign's going to die. You guys will not want to go back and have to restart everything over again. It's either that or we go back and we basically revert and rewind time and say you never opened that door. So I wanted to play the BBEG a little bit more into its strengths and weaknesses, as the book says. He is a conflicted individual.
He's supposed to show up though, right? Like he is supposed to show up from time to time.
From time to time, he's meant to show up, although he's not meant to show up to save people.
Yeah.
Now, what's the particular instance that you're calling at? Well, what's the one that's stuck in your mind?
So let's see. The one time that kind of like, so the first time it happened was at the hag's house, right?
Yes.
He showed up, and that would have made sense to me. Okay, we have the woman he wants. He's like, this is perfect time. They're in a situation of distress. I can take it. I can go, and like, yeah, that made sense to me. He got what he wanted out of it. And then the second time was, when was it? It was the courtyard, or the like, not the courtyard, the druid place, right?
Yes, the druid place. So he wasn't. So he was already at the druid place. He was coming to the druid place, and I think I tried to give you a bit of backstory as to why he's at the druid place as well. He's there lamenting. He's there looking at the fog and the visage of Barovia that should have been his, and he goes there. He goes there to lament. That's what he does. You just happen to catch him when he was going there, because I wanted to give you another insight into Strahd's character.
That's another one. I was fine with that one. That was cool. I like that because we showed up, he was already there. So I was like, okay, well, this is something we're just going to have to deal with. But the third time was where we're in Barovia and we're fighting these fucking vampire spawns. And he fucking shows up. Yeah. I was so fucking mad.
So
I wanted to throw my screen. I was so upset.
So I had him show up there for a couple of reasons, right? One of the main reason why he showed up there was not so much as to save you guys, but to take the town.
Like, okay, that makes actually more sense than now. I have context.
He wanted
Yeah.
the town because at the end of the day, you walked into what would have been half the quest. You walked into the bones of Saint Andral buried in the grave diggers house up on the second floor. That basically Strahd had told them to get so that he could get into the town because the only thing that was protecting the town were the bones of Saint Andral. While counter to that, you've got the Baron of Valaki basically doing this all will be well, doing these weekly festivals, believing that he's responsible for keeping Strahd at bay,
Hmm.
right?
No,
So,
now that I have context, that makes a lot more sense. He would
yeah,
show up to
not
take the town. I'm really
not.
bothered by that, by the way, because like me as a player, when we were walking in, I saw a
Mhm.
dude digging up a grave. You brought it up to me as we were walking into the town, and in my head, I'm like, that's weird. No one should be digging up a grave. But that's really fucking weird that he's doing that.
Mhm.
I want to ask, but in my head, I'm like, Nick wouldn't care.
I know, right? Which is
So I have to
which
walk past it.
yeah, which comes to the whole point of, you should play a character, like especially a first time player, you should play a character that you follow your instinct with. Like Nick's character is absolutely fantastic, and the way that he's done, the way that he is brilliant. Coming from a veteran player, it makes complete sense. So then if that veteran player doesn't act on those instincts, still got another four people in the party.
Mhm. I was
Like
hoping
they see
somebody would, dude. I was really
they
hoping somebody
they see
would.
it, but they don't, which is where again when we're talking about sort of like old like experienced heads and newbies and stuff like that, they don't really understand what the DM's trying to get at. Like the DM doesn't just describe something willy-nilly, they describe something to you because it's pivotal in some way, shape, or form, no matter how benign it is. So because you walked in on half of that thing, right, then knowing the context of what I've got as well, right, so throughout the entire time of Valaki, you've been looking at dolls. You've been looking at Blinsky dolls. Is no Blinsky is no fun. And one of the biggest things was Izek Strasny, who has the right hand of demon, was getting these dolls. Okay? But nobody got close enough to those dolls to realize that those dolls were all modeled after Irina Kolyana. Every single one of them. In his room, he has thousands of dolls modeled after Irina
So
Kolyana.
fucking creepy, by the way. Strahd is
I
so
know
fucking creepy.
he's. I
When
love
Eddie
the
fucking
freaking.
looked in that window and saw the two mannequin kids staring at a wall, I was like, nope, nope, happy I'm not there. Fuck that. Nope,
Yeah.
nope, nope, nope.
But here's the other context, right? He's taken Irina Kolyana.
Hmm.
You know that, and you have no
He's got
idea
her.
what
I
he's
have no idea
currently
what
doing.
she like. As
You
far as
have no
Nick's
idea.
concerned, she's dead or been turned into a vampire. Like one of the other. She's gone.
Yeah, and at the end of that conversation, or the end of that bit with Strahd as well, I think he turned to you and said, "And he cannot wait to reunite brother and sister."
Hmm. Yeah.
So there's reason too why he turned up as well. Like he turned up to take the town, then realized that Izek Strasny was unconscious inside of a thing, and was like, "Well, this is a good opportunity right here. Let's
Well,
tap
thanks for
in."
doing that for me.
Exactly. And thirdly,
Not that
do you
Izzy would be a
really
problem to him, anyways.
and third, do you think that the BBEG would let it go unnoticed that somebody changed into him in the middle of a fucking town and intimidated people?
Sometimes I want to punch Dan in the face. just sometimes. Other times
Just
I
some.
love it because I feel like we thrive off of each other a lot.
Yeah, you guys.
But then
you
there's
guys
sometimes
do
where
it.
he just like does something and I'm like, no.
It's that moment where everything goes. Like I had three good justifications for it. It's just that I had to force it on you guys at that point in time
Hmm.
because those, according to the book, those vampires do not stop. They don't stop hunting you down. So if you had gotten out of the house, they would have gone. And I'm pretty sure, I think it was either Etty or yourself that was down, wasn't it? It was one of you two that were down.
I think Eddie was. I might have
Yeah,
been. It might have been me.
yeah.
One
So
of us were down.
either one of you would have been taken, and you had barely made those guys like they were nowhere near
Kick
being
their
dead.
ass now, though. Swear to God. I got magical hands. All right, I'd kick their. Nick is
Yeah.
so in himself right now. When he woke up and was like, "Oh, fuck!"
So yeah, while I completely understand and I can see it from your perspective as well, like I can see having the BBEG show up every single time that you are about to suffer the consequences of the decisions that you've made, and have him take that away from you. I get that. I understand that. But from my perspective, I'm trying to make this campaign run a little bit longer as well, as to not kill you guys off, when you haven't
I think
even
it's very
experienced
understandable. No,
all of it. Yeah.
Like, so
But
the frustration is understood, but also I get why you did what you did.
yeah, and I understand the frustration
And both,
as well.
I think both sides are kind of like understood now at this point. Like it's sometimes the DM has to make decisions like that.
You have to, regardless of what people think as well. I mean, you know yourself, like you have to do it in order
I
to
don't judge
either
you for it at all.
Going. I wouldn't
My
care
dog
if you
just
did.
entered my room.
Yeah, I wouldn't care if you did. I mean, you do it to keep not even just the table happy, but just to keep everything rolling again. Like I want to complete Strahd. I want to finish Strahd.
I do too. I'm excited for it. Should be a good game.
So I don't want to have to start again. But like, I love the way that the story's gone. I love the way that everything's sort of twists and turns, and how everything's kind of like falling into place and stuff like that. And I don't want to have to go right back to the beginning and then have you guys go. What do we do? Do we metagame this? Do we do the same thing? Do we go a different way? Do we do this first? Do we do that first? Do we go somewhere that we haven't gone before?
I'm not metagaming shit. All right. Like take for instance when we were fighting that blue drake around the cart and everyone kind of like got away from the cart. Nah, Nick's not getting away from that. They don't know. They don't know that cart going to go boom.
Exactly. Yeah.
But also Nick would try to get to the dragon, so it kind of defeats the purpose. Nick wouldn't stay in the cart anyways. He's got to get on top of a dragon to ride the dragon. Yeah.
So Strahd's character as well. Like Strahd is described as a manic depressive. So that's what he is. He is depressed beyond belief.
All right.
Like the one point of all of this is that is the one question that I keep on saying to Etty, like in the back. It's like, ask the question: why has he brought you here? Why has he brought you here? Why has he brought all those other fucking adventurers here? Why does he keep bringing people here? Why? Well, the answer's simple: to kill him.
He wants to die.
He wants to die. That's exactly it. He wants to die. But he's
over it, dude.
Yeah, human nature begs him not to. Mm-hmm. He fights for survival at the same time as he wants the release of death. And that is the ultimate confliction for Strahd.
I'm gonna fucking give it to him too, don't you worry. He's gonna get it.
so it makes sense to me, if the characters are gonna die from something other than Strahd's hands, Strahd doesn't want that to happen, because he wants you to gain the power to be able to come back and kill you, or die by his hand.
You want to know Nick's goal at this point? With everything he's dealt with and all the bullshit he's had to put up with at this point?
Rip out Strahd's heart and just force feed him it?
It's not even like that. So once Nick feels as though they are at a point where they could actually beat Strahd in a fight, which he doesn't. Nick's cocky. He feels good now, but he knows very well how strong Strahd is. He wouldn't contest him otherwise at the moment, unless Strahd showed up in front of him, which Nick's never backed down from Strahd. But now, like especially like once this Amber Temple thing gets solved and if something comes to revelation, I don't know what's gonna be in there. I've never played the game before, but like I feel like we're gonna find something out. After that, and kind of after we've done that part and we've maybe went to Krisk, Nick's gonna decide right then and there, all right, so we could fight Strahd. We could go there as a team right now and head to Strahd's mansion and fight him, but I don't want to do that. I want to go from town to town yelling from the fucking rooftops that Strahd's a little baby bitch. And I want to free each one of these towns from the grasp of that little cunt. And I dare his ass to show up so we can send his ass packing back to his mansion and we tell him, we'll come see you when we're fucking ready to. But you have no control over us anymore.
See, and that's the beauty of it, because he hasn't fought you guys enough for you to, enough for you to be like, I want to fight him. But the fact that you're thinking that and the characters are going that way means that he's gotten into your head. Mm-hmm. Like he's gotten fully into your head, which again, for those people that want to DM and stuff like that, that's probably one of the best. Probably one of the best praises somebody can actually give you as a DM is the fact that, you know, the character that you're playing
Really hates the BB&G.
Yeah, that has psychologically gotten to your players up to the point where not only do you want to kill him, you want to fucking drag his name through the dirt at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's good. And that's one of the things that actually I worried the fuck out of when I first played Strahd. And it wasn't because of any of you guys, it was mainly because of Dan. So Dan reads backstory upon backstory.
He has like I have like barely like minimum like info on Strahd, but Dan knows everything about that fucker.
Exactly. So obviously, when you read a book and then you go see a movie of the book, it's never the fucking same. People have their own takes on exactly what goes on and what happens and stuff like that. So my Strahd is going to be different to the Strahd that he's read in book after book.
Of course he is, yeah.
Like, yeah, so like, how do I do that justice? How do I do it up to the expectations that he had? How do I do that? Well, the answer is you don't. You don't. If it's not living up to his expectations, then he needs to jump down a peg or two.
He needs to understand that that's not something that can happen, and you need to pull your expectations down a bit. That's why. That's the big reason why, like, say our Dragon Heist game right now and Waterdeep. It's why it's not Waterdeep. It's why it's Harris. That's why the NPCs you're meeting aren't the ones that are in the book. That's why Jarlaxle, which is a prominently known Drow character in the lore of D&D, a lot of people know who Jarlaxle is. That's why he's a girl in my game. And he has completely different aspirations and goals than the actual Jarlaxle does. And that speaks for volumes on everything. That's why my Blackstaff is different. That's why all the leaders of the certain factions are different. I don't want them to be the same, so you can't assume something and then go in. I also, the more I play with veteran players, the more I realize that they just already know monsters in and out and stuff. So I really love to change things up with monsters as well. Like my players fought a blue dragon, and in 5e, blue dragons can't cast spells. Just not in there anymore. They also don't have very many effects. They have Dragon Breath, and then they have their Claw and Bite Attack. And that's really all dragons have. They're really just big punching bags. They're not really that special anymore. Well, in 3.5, they can cast spells. Also, in 4e, they have other special abilities, like they can turn their Cone Breath into a Line Breath, and it's stronger and only targets one person. Much like how the Lightning Breath is for the blue dragon, but it's only one person. It's not a chain effect.
Why does that give me flashbacks to Dragonheart and the spitting thing?
It's kind of like that. So my dragons are like that in game, but my dragons can also transform from human to dragon, even though that's not technically said in the book either. But I let my dragons do that. They have a human form and a dragon form. I feel like all dragons should have a human form. God damn it, fight me.
Yeah, I think they do in the history. I think it's only the gold dragon that actually states so in the dragon stat block. I think it is.
Yeah, it's only one is the gold dragon.
Yeah, but they should all be able to. Otherwise, you wouldn't have Dragonborn.
Exactly. Well, Dragonborn are not like Dragonborn are from a different dimension. You're gonna get hate for that because Dragonborn are actually not related to dragons.
See, I actually thought they were like the spawns of Bahamut and Tiamat. That's how I thought they were. They were like the same way as sort of like tieflings were. You know, the blood of Asmodeus is
I don't know.
I
don't know the exact backstory, but apparently how they came into what's the current world right now? What are we in? What's 5e in? What's the current name of the campaign world?
Oh God, I always get confused with this because
it's not Faerun, right?
Well, people say Faerun, some people say Forgotten Realms, some people say like I always forget which one it is because I don't.
Forgotten Realms. Okay, so in Forgotten Realms, technically how the Dragonborn was like they were from a different either planet or dimension or something like that, and they were born and raised there somehow. I can't quite remember. I think it was like they were birthed from like pods or some crazy shit. It was weird. And then the dimension opened, a tear opened, and they left. Their whole city just like onto the continent of Forgotten Realms, which I think is Faerun. And that's how they exist.
That's highly coincidental that they have an ancestry of actual dragons. Then, when the universe that they come from didn't seem to have any.
They had dragons. I don't know how. I need to look this up.
it's just very interesting. But again, like with this type of stuff, like the way that Wizards of the Coast, and we should probably talk about that as
Yeah, we
well.
actually should. Let's go ahead and move on to Wits of the
Yeah.
Coast.
The way that Wizards of the Coast do this is they, through each edition, they change things, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, right? And a lot of veteran players will take what they want where they want, from things.
A
Like, and
beer.
that makes a
So,
beer.
so the planet of the Forgotten Realms name is Torel, and it has a twin named Abir, but they're on different like planes of existence. And something happened, like the planets aligned, and a portal opened up between the two of them, which isn't supposed to happen, and the Dragonborns got spat out like that. It's like a parallel world where things are just more fucked up, honestly. But
Very
it doesn't. I'm trying to find their actual fucking. Keep talking though.
Yeah. So the way that the way that they do it is actually great. Like nothing really in the lore of D&D, to me anyway, and this is my personal opinion, is raw, is rules as written. It's not lore as such as you have to include it in every single game, right? You don't have to. Like, they have a list of gods and goddesses that you can follow. For God's sake, even some of the Egyptian gods and the Norse gods are like,
Yeah.
why
There's
would
a
people
list
have,
on list on list of gods.
yeah, so you can include or exclude any god that you want. Like, you don't have to have every single god in there. And that's one thing that I struggled with when I first started. I was like, wait, I have to list every single god in here. How do I do this? Like, how do you include every single god and their followers into this game when some of them don't even have any bearing on the story that you want to tell?
That's why.
Just,
That's how I like when I made my god list. I made my prime deities, like my good deities, my bad deities, and then some demigods and stuff like that. And if a player ever comes to me and says they want to worship something else, so they wonder why this god's not in there, I'm like, oh, that's a dead god, and you are now worshiping a dead god.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually one of the beauties of one of the players in Tomb of Annihilation. He actually follows Ubtail. He's a follower of Ubtail. And for those people that don't know Tomb of Annihilation, Ubtail left Chult because of the current infighting that they had in the towns. He basically got fed up of people fighting in his area and just went, fuck it, I'm gone. See yous. Deal with it on your own. So he's still following a god that has basically abandoned me. Which is I find is brilliant, because his whole aspect of his character is he's gonna make Chult better again.
So his god will come back.
Yeah, so his god will come back. And it's just like, that's just so
That's a
brilliant.
really cool idea.
Yeah, it's like, that's absolutely fantastic. That's amazing, especially with
That's brilliant.
Again, I'm not gonna spoil Tomb of Annihilation for people, but it's brilliant for the internals and the working story of that book.
Right.
It's just perfect. But back onto Wizards of the Coast.
Since we're on the topic of Wizard of the Coast, I feel like we should at least talk about the changes they made with the races and everything. Since we need to do it, it needs to happen. It needs to be at least talked about. So let me look.
Okay.
Because I want to get this right.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question, right? Let me ask you this question. Instinctively, what accent do you give elves? Instinctively.
Hold on, I have to the best way I can tell you this is I can just do an elven accent, and that's the best. I don't know. What do you want me to do?
Okay, so why is it?
How is it like this? I don't know why I talk like this. This is just how I do it.
Yeah, exactly. So that had to have stemmed from somewhere, right?
I have dwarven accents like this, and I give them a more gruddier voice. But it's really the same accent. Because I can only do one accent.
So at the same time, like, people always assume that, and this is what it is, it's an assumption. People assume that because dwarves are stored and they're heavy, they'll have a gravelly accent, they'll have an underground accent, and because they're mountainous people, well, they have to be from Scotland. It's one of the only regions that has the biggest mountains. But that's not strictly true. Like Russia has like more mountains than Scotland does.
If I could do a Russian accent, my dwarves would have a Russian accent, because I just think that would be great for dwarves.
Yeah.
You
Now,
come to my place on the day of my mother's, on the day of my mother's, day of my daughter's wedding. Like a mafia accent.
Essentially, you're just doing a Barovian accent. That's all you're doing. That's all you're
But
doing. But I do like the changes that they're doing. Like I like that they're trying to change what people's, not even expectations, but what is ingrained into people's mindset as what is a dwarf, what is an elf, what is a human, and all that type of stuff. But at the same time, the onus doesn't fall on them. It's the same type of deal that we have with media influencing and censorship, right? Is that like what's the word? Stereotypes. A stereotype created, or a stereotype existed. So, perfect example for that is this conversation that we're having now. Like, dwarves are stereotyped as Scottish. Well, was that created by media, or was that always like that? Because the very first time that I ever heard the dwarves were meant to be Scottish was because Tolkien referred to the dwarven people as the Scots, because he based them on Scots.
I think a lot of that is from Lord of the Rings. I think a lot of how we portray elves and dwarves and certain whatever races, whatever other, I've never watched Lord of the Rings, whatever other races that are in Lord of the Rings, it's because of Tolkien.
Yeah, exactly. Elves are meant to be wispy and all that type of stuff because they're meant to be emotionless from being alive for X amount of years and stuff like that. And he actually based the language on Welsh. And if you ever heard of Welsh, well, actually you've heard some Welsh because Happy speaks it in your campaign. Mm-hmm. Like Crocio y Cymru, that type of stuff. It's a very flowing language. It's very flowing, like elves are, like your stereotypical elf would be. But I've actually started to move my elves from that type of flowiness into Japanese. That's how I've started to move my elves. There's an area of one of my other campaigns where they're gonna go into like sort of like almost like a Scoia'tael deal of elves. They're like guerrilla fighters essentially. But essentially what they're walking into is a Japanese garden. With torii gates set up and all that type of stuff, and the same type of architecture of Japanese, and their culture and their accents are going to be Japanese because they want harmony and serenity through not fighting. So, and that's what I've done with them. But there are other elves who speak in their flowy accent.
I actually base all of my gods off of Japanese names and culture.
Yeah,
a lot of how they act, a lot of how my gods act, and a lot of how the culture they create with their creatures is all based on Japanese culture, because I love Japanese culture. So
what Wizards of the Coast are doing, they're responding to what is cancel culture at the moment. That's what they're doing. They're responding to cancel culture. But the people who play D&D, who have been playing it for a long time, know that what they say isn't gospel.
Yeah, I mean, it's everyone can do it however they want at their table. There's going to be a lot of people who just don't see this as a rule and never implement it. It won't change for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I'm in the situation where I kind of just don't care enough. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that big of a change. The big thing that changes to me is that they're changing it the way where certain ability score increases or effects are no longer tied to certain races. So take a orc, for instance, or half orc. I think their ability score increases like a +2 to strength. Or something of the sorts. You can now take that, get rid of it, and give them a +2 in intelligence.
Okay. See, that's all well and good, and I like that. But why not have a roll table for it? Like if the way that I've always this is going to be disgusting, right? The way that I've always thought about it is when you do the initial splurge of your intelligence, charisma, and all your attributes and stuff like that. Essentially, that's your character being born. You're going through the birth canal on each freaking roll of the dice. You're being pushed through that, and you're like, this is your strength, this is your intelligence. Well, why not add that modifier to that particular role on the birth and of the creation of the character? Like, you come out with this strength, you come out with this constitution, you come out with this modifier, you come out with this, like, all that type of stuff. If they don't want to tie it to race, then why not why give the people the opportunity to make what they want when they could just do that anyway? If they wanted to have a random character and be a random person in the world via RNG, it should just be a roll table, right?
I think so. I'm kind of against it for a couple of reasons. One of them is so take Orc. Well, since we're on that example, take Orc for example. Orcs are predominantly like strong. They're predominantly known to be very fierce fighters. They grew up like that. That's kind of how they are. I see it more as like if you want to be an intelligent orc, be an intelligent orc. You can be an intelligent orc, but you're still an orc. And I can't see an orc being like super weak. I like to think I
see. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because if you have a look at the actual history behind what they've written for the half orcs and stuff like that, like orcish men will go around raping, pillaging villages the same way as Viking clans used to do, which results in the half orcs, right? So they're going to be strong because they're going to have to kill all the men in the village, and they're going to have to pin the woman down, and they're going to have to implant their seed that way. And then obviously that race is going to kick in, and she's going to give birth to the half orc, and yeah, it's going to be as strong as a half orc.
It's that orcish blood in them, you know?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You're choosing to be like an orc wizard. You're choosing to fight that heritage, to fight that where you come from, and that should be a journey as your character takes. It shouldn't be taken away from the start. That's my only big issue with it. Is I feel like if you can take the +2 strength and you can take it and you can move it to intelligence, it kind of just deletes your entire heritage as an orc.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that you look like an orc.
I would agree with that. Because the other thing that I've also taken away from D&D in the amount of years that I play with you, it's not your good stats that make your character. It's the bad stats that make your character.
Yeah, 100%.
It's always the bad stats. It's what you're worst at, because you're not going to improve something you're good at. You should always be improving something you're bad at, which is why the DM will reward you with items that are going to boost your weakest stat.
Like, let's be honest, your intelligence, if you're making a wizard orc, 9 out of 10 times your intelligence is gonna be bigger than your strength strat anyways. If you're making a wizard orc, like that's just how it is, you know. It's not really gonna do anything, but because like you're gonna roll your 46s, or you're gonna do manual or point buy, or however you do it, and you're gonna put everything, your highest stat you get, into intelligence because you're making a wizard.
Yep.
But I like the idea that like you were born with that strength and you can't rid yourself of it. Like that is something orcs get. They just predominantly are born stronger than most races.
Well, it's the same way that they also fight against the blood of Grunch as well. Like every single time they get into a fight, they have a blood rage, which is powered by the god that created the Orcish race. Like, so
I don't know if they're getting rid of those. I hope they're not getting rid of like specific race features like that, because that's going to be really weird to me. Yeah, you can take that and you can put that on, like, I don't know, a turtle. And this turtle's like waddles its weight. I don't know, man. Seems kind of weird. I could see you putting on a halfling though. That could be kind of fun. Have a little halfling get fucking pissed. I don't know.
Oh, for God's sake.
But changing the word race to species doesn't really bother me at all. If that makes people feel better about it, then whatever. It's fine to me. I don't have like I'm not gonna like, that's not where I'm gonna like, that's not the hill I'm gonna die on. That's not, I don't care enough. It really doesn't bother me.
Nah, it doesn't bother me either. You can call it whatever you want. Like,
it's just a word. All words are made up, man. I don't.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about a fantasy world that we're creating ourselves. Our imagination, words are nothing to us. Like, I mean, they're nothing to us and they're everything to us, used in the right way.
As for changing attributes or special like race features, things like that, in my own campaigns, I'll be keeping it probably the same. Because I believe in culture and heritage, and I don't want to take that away from how my orcs are. They are predominantly known to be strong because they're a tribal race. They fight for everything. They have to fight to prove their strength. The strongest is the leader in the group, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It wouldn't make much sense. You can still totally be an orc wizard. Just understand that you're going to be a bit stronger than, like what a halfling would be at its birth,
Exactly. And that's not saying that you can't have a different culture of half orcs or orcs in your campaign. Like the way that you described your orcs is pretty much the same way as I would describe my orcs. It's that same type of nomadic,
that kind of feral
yeah,
to
the,
them.
the feral living off the land, berserker type attitude is sort of like we follow that guy because that guy will beat us up if we don't follow him. Like it's simple as that. But if he shows any weakness, then we all pummel him, and then whoever gets the leader is the next leader. Like it's that type of mentality. But that's not saying that you couldn't have another group of orcs that have broken away from that because they don't like the way that's going, and have made their own society somewhere along the lines, and have created their own underground world in the Underdark or something like that. And that creates a beautiful juxtaposition because people are used to having the orcs that way, and all of a sudden they've walked into an orcish camp, which is like beautiful stone buildings, and they're all
100%.
And it was like, wait, what's going on here?
No, if you want to come to me as a player and tell me like I want my family or I want what the orcs I came from to be a bit different, and I'm like, okay, well this is how we'll do it. I can already wing it through my head. So
yeah.
A family got sick. They got a plague or something while the orc group was traveling. The orc group turned and said, "Nah, well, you're slowing us down. Fuck you. We're leaving you." They left them. They recovered from their sickness, but now are alone. They begin to build up on their own because since they're so few of numbers, they can't travel as safe as they used to. So they just stay at the spot, and it becomes an encampment. And now this encampment is more focused towards knowledge instead of strength. And that's where you came from. And boom, we have your thing. But they're still orcs. They still have that heritage. They still kind of grew up from like being strong. That hasn't vanished. It hasn't been 300-400 years. They're not different looking yet.
Yeah.
So
it also negates the fact that your dump stat can be strength if you're a wizard. I mean,
Yeah.
wizards always have their dump strats as like their lowest stat always goes into strength because wizards don't need strength. So
well, a lot of people will put the dump strat in strength. Let's be honest, it's kind of a shitty stat if you're not. That's a hot topic, but I'm gonna tell you, strength and intelligence are fucking trash unless you're a wizard or you need it like you're like an actual strength character. Unless you are an intelligent based character or a strength based character, those are your dump stats. You ain't dumping. Your Dex ain't being your dump stat. That's your fucking AC, bud. You're not dumping that. You know how many wisdom saving throws are in the game? Hell no, I don't want a low wisdom saving throw.
You can say the same thing about charisma though, but
that's really definitely a good dump stat too. I've dumped that one before as well. The more I think about it, yeah.
Like looking back at all the players that I've seen, you are absolutely right. Like strength is always a dump stat, and the people that have made dexterity their dump stat have felt the detriment of their decision. Like they felt it. Their AC's low. They can't roll away from X, Y, and Z. And,
that's something I'd do. I'd totally make dexterity my dump stat. That seems like it would be a really fun character to play.
But at the same time, I do feel like strength has its usage inside and outside of combat. Like,
it does. I think
the variant rules and stuff. The variant rules and stuff like that. Being able to use your intimidation for strength rather than charisma.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It's never happened in my games, and I never understand why it doesn't happen in my games, right? But
it's not a really common rule. A lot of DMs don't actually allow it at their tables.
Really?
Yeah. From what I've seen.
I seriously think it should be raw. Like intimidation isn't just charismatic. I get intimidated by someone who's built like a freaking tank.
No, if you're built like a tank, you should be intimidating. That made no sense to me that you can't use your strength stat for that. If you're this big burly man
or
woman, my bad, not trying to judge. If you're this big burling person, you should be able to intimidate someone, or at least have a better chance at it.
Like you could be a halfling and still be like strength 20, like a barbarian halfling. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your height and size, but sort of like your width. If you see a halfling that's like, twice the width of a normal halfling, you'd be like,
Or how I would roleplay that is like, say someone like you want to intimidate someone and they're 6 feet tall and you're a halfling, so you're like 3 feet tall. So you walk up to them and tell them like, "Hey, you get down on my level right fucking now," and you jump and grab them by like the shirt collar and pull them to your level as an intimidation. That's a strength check. That's no longer a charisma. You are intimidating them with your strength to be able to take this 6 foot tall person and pull them down to your level to look you eye to eye. That's how I would do it, you know?
Yeah, it makes complete it makes complete sense, which is why I've always allowed that, not even as an optional rule. It is a rule at my table that you can strength and you can charisma intimidation. But like strength also like that's one of the only uses of strength that I've ever had at my table, but it's not the only application of strength that I've had at my table. Like I've had people go up to chest, try to unpick a lock of the chest because it was locked, and then turn around and walk away while the barbarian's just lumbering off behind them. And I'm thinking,
break that fucking chest open.
Yeah, smash the chest open. What are you doing? You've got a walking siege machine right behind you. Like, just smash the goddamn chest
open. That dude can cut that in half with ease. Fucking break. Yeah. Just stomp on it, dude. Like, you got it.
The same thing for doors.
It's a fragile old chest.
They go out to doors. The door's locked. Oh, we'll try to lockpick it. Your lockpick breaks in the lock. Ah, shit, can't go this way. And they all walk off with 2 strength characters. And I'm like,
when the barbarian, she just like, I'll try, let me try, and walks up and like takes a doorknob, and he doesn't actually like punch it. He just like forcefully pushes it open, like it wasn't locked.
Exactly. And there's strength applications that come into that as well. Like grappling needs to be refined. We all know grappling needs to be refined. It's one of the least loved.
I don't mean, and I agree with that, but when we're saying it, I want to be clear that I'm not saying it needs to go back to how it was in 3.5, because people really people really like to praise that grappling was better than it is now in 5e. It's just more wordy, man. It's the same grappling. It works the same way. The same detriments that we're seeing now in 5e are the same ones you had to deal with in 3.5 and 3. There's a bit differences. I don't think it was as bad because there were a lot more different features and traits you could have in 3.5e that could really deal with. Like there was a whole thing, you could be like this grappling master in 3a and it worked. Can't do that in 5e. It needs to be overhauled, really, if you ask me.
It does. It needs to be overhauled, but then again, that is another application of strength. But again, it's an application of dexterity because you can use both. But the grappler itself has to use athletics. They have to use athletics. Which is fine.
I don't know if I agree with that. Because like I have a friend who is like maybe the size of a toothpick. He's tiny as shit, but I've watched that dude like spider jump onto someone's back and wrap his limbs around that person. That's fucking grappling, but he's not using his strength. He is using his dexterity and his flexibility to grab this person and like not let them move.
I'd actually completely agree with that too, because in HEMA, a lot of the moves are grappling moves, and you have to be able to know where the pivot point in a person's arm, leg, body is, so that you know when you grab them in a certain way, regardless of their strength, they can be built like an ox. You've got them. They can't move out of this. I mean, it's the same way when you're fighting with a blade.
They teach that a lot in certain forms of martial arts.
Exactly. It's very big in it's very big in karate, I think it is, because that's all about grappling and throwing.
Yeah, because karate's all about self-defense.
Yeah. So
and I think in jiu-jitsu as well, actually.
Yeah, I would completely agree with it. You don't need to be strong. You just need to be dexterous. So both ways kind of does make sense. But
this almost makes me want to make it where you can grapple with dexterity, but I don't know. I'd have to go look at the actual stats and see how OP that would be. I'd have to go actually check.
How strong would that make monks?
Yeah, dude, monks are already kind of strong. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So how strong could you make a monk again by allowing a monk to be a grapple master?
I might be a bit biased. I really like monks. I think they're probably my most the funnest melee class. I think fighters are the most versatile, but monks are really fucking fun.
I have a big soft spot for fighters, always.
I like gunslinger fighters.
I don't like guns in D&D. I'm a high fantasy D&D player. I don't like guns in D&D.
That's the highest I ever take my like my industrial age kind of thing. I always have like that one city that kind of like they're pushing on the usage of coal and stuff like that, and gunpowder has just barely been invented. That's the highest I ever go.
Yeah,
no smart wizard ever breaks the threshold onto like cars or stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like I try.
Or rocket ship would be a better example.
Yeah, I have characters, or I've had a character in the first campaign who wanted to use bombs as her main weapon. That was what she wanted. She wanted to throw canned bombs.
Sounds like she wants to be a God, what is the name of that new class? What's the newest class in 5e?
Oh, I was gonna say Arcanist, but it's not Arcanist, is it?
No, it's not called Arcanist.
Engineer. Oh God,
we are failing right now as DMs. Is what we're doing. I
It
have one in my campaign.
Artificer.
Artificer, yeah. It sounds like she wants to be an artificer.
Yeah, but that wasn't invented at that point in time. So we had to homebrew it. But the way that I wanted it was that she was the first and only person to utilize this technology. Her father was the first person to stumble upon this technology, and that obviously landed her in some very deep intrigue of backstory from people basically kidnapping him and trying to use his technology against him and stuff like that. But that's as far as I go. That I don't want guns to start becoming the mode of weaponry in a D&D campaign.
No, I don't either.
Because your fighter then becomes why should he use any martial weapon? Why should he use any simple weapon? You might as well just pick up a gun and just use that instead.
I've seen that argument with people before too. Like, they don't think monks belong in 5e because, like, why would I be a swordsman with all this plate armor when I can just have the same amount of AC by just like meditating, you know? I see
the same reason why the Shaolin, is it Shaolin monks or the Tibetan monks?
I think it's Tibetan, depending on what you're going for.
What they are. They're warriors that basically went, we don't need this, and then they went and they basically trained in martial arts and meditated.
Here's my thing on it. It's like, if you have that problem with monks, if you look at that and go, like, why should I be a fighter because monks exist? I'm trying to figure out why you should be a fighter because wizards exist, bro. Why do you...
Yeah.
If you have a problem with monks being like, why should I be a fighter when I can just be a monk? Why should you be a fighter when you can just be a wizard and fireball? I don't understand. You should be a fighter because you want to be a fucking fighter, bud.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's what you want to play. One of the I tell you, one of the biggest things that I've got as well. I don't know about you, but how often do you allow people to change their player characters at your table?
What do you mean, like change their character completely?
Yeah. So say for example, in the session that we've got going at the moment for Dragon Quest, right? Mm-hmm. Say in half a year's time, I come up to you and say, hey, I'm bored of playing Happy. I want to change my character.
I don't want to stop you, because if you're bored, you're bored, and that doesn't seem like it's going to be fun for you to continue playing anymore. Mm-hmm. I'd probably say all right, let's find a really cool way to kill your character off. That's fine. And then we'll introduce your new character. But I'd also sit down and tell you, there's a good chance that the party won't like you as much. You're gonna lose that bond that you've grown with the party over the course of the years. That's something you're gonna have to work towards.
Yeah.
I'd probably allow it. I just want control. I'd want to help, partial control over how we do it.
See, I despise it. I hate it. I don't like it, and the main reason why I don't like it is because when you make your character, you put in a lot of effort into that character. You've thought about that character for a long time. You've thought about how they act, how they walk, how they talk, what they look like, what they dress in, everything.
Yeah.
And then to be bored of a character that you've created and you've role-played and you've basically been working towards a story arc and a dynamic.
It's definitely a foreign concept.
Yeah.
I couldn't see myself getting bored. I'm never like I've told you before, I want to play a warlock and a wizard too, so I kind of want Nick to die, but I don't want Nick to die because I'm bored of Nick. I love Nick.
Yeah, I
As a
want
DM, I want to play more classes.
yeah, which comes with time. Like it does, it just comes with time.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why you couldn't change class in the same character. Like the way that I've always treated warlocks is that I think somebody mentioned it in a Reddit post, and I think it's one of the most brilliant DM ideas ever. Is that warlocks are not created. No, warlocks are manufactured. You can't just be a warlock. Like you make a pact with somebody.
Yeah.
And one of those ways of making a pact is making a pact upon death. Like you die regardless of what you were before in the real life, in your previous life, monk, wizard, anything. You're going through that tunnel. You're being shuffled by Charon across the River Styx, or you're going through the Astral Sea or something like that. And all of these demons, all of these fey creatures are all peddling their second chances. This is your second chance for
I'll bring you back, bro. Just worship.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll bring you back. You can have a portion of my power, and you will be my instrument. And you come back as a warlock under that person's thumb.
That's totally a cool way to make a warlock. I handled this with my player currently, actually, in the campaign. He's an Aasimar. He started off as an Aasimar warlock, and he was born as a Hexblade warlock. He was touched by the Raven Queen. And Hexblade warlocks, as you know, they were like, it's a weapon technically, not necessarily the Raven Queen herself. How this worked was his family went to the well one day because they were praying because their baby was weird because it's an Aasimar baby, and they're trying to figure out why the fuck their baby's so weird. And he's a noble family. He has no idea of which noble family he belongs to in Harris. But his backstory started like that, where they went to the well to try to figure out, because the well is seen as this kind of foreign thing that leads down into the Underdark, basically, and like maybe this is something to do with it. Maybe we can pray to this. We've already tried praying to gods and gotten no answer. So let's pray to this thing. Let's just like come in here. And that same tavern you guys started in is the same one they went to. And while he was there, something at the bottom listened and connected with him and became his Hexblade. And he didn't realize it until he was like 10, 12 years old, when his family had already abandoned him because they were like weirded out by him. They dropped him off in an alley somewhere, and he was found by other people to be raised. And 10, 12 years old, he fucking spawned in a Hexblade, and he's like, wow, okay, yeah, this is something I have. This is my power. And he grew up as a warlock. And then now he grew older. He's in his 20-somethings. He's finally kind of like coming to terms with himself.
You muted yourself.
I did? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know how you managed to do that.
When did that happen?
Like
just
literally, now? Yeah, literally as you were saying, that he grew up as a warlock.
Yeah, so he grew up as a warlock. My bad, I muted myself in Discord. I don't know how the fuck I pulled that off. What button on this keyboard does that? So he grew up as a warlock, and this is kind of how he was raised, how everything was handled. But as he grew up, as he got older, his Aasimar part of himself kind of started to come out more. He started getting talking to finally his angel that all Aasimars are technically connected to. They usually have like a little middleman, which is their angel connected to whatever god that made the Aasimar. And he realized, like, oh, so this was what I was supposed to do. This was my life. But I accidentally stepped into the Hexblade life. So he got stuck, and for a few levels he was fighting the thing. Like he was going into it, like he had like dreams where he was in the middle of his own consciousness, and like one side was all red and demonic, and it was his Hexblade, and the other side was all like light and crystal and perfect, and it was the angel. And he talked back and forth to both of them. We have these single sessions where me and him are just talking. He's talking to both these entities inside of him, and eventually he chose her over the Hexblade. He broke away from his pact and became a paladin. And how a lot of people would do this, like especially if they watch Critical Role, how a lot of people, like say Travis Willingham, he's a warlock in the campaign of Critical Role, up until a certain point where he says, fuck you, I'm not going to be a warlock anymore, I'm going to be a paladin. Well, how they did it there, whereas he has all these warlock levels, and then he started level 1 on paladin, and then he proceeds. How I did it, and how it might be a bit controversial, I just said, all right, take all those warlock levels, they're paladin levels now. And how I ruled it for that was because they took it, like right after that kind of thing happened, he stayed a warlock for a bit after that. And So for like 3 sessions after he made that choice, he was powerless. He had no powers whatsoever. He just had a sword, and that was it. And I told him, take your character and turn it into a level 8 fighter. Because that's what you are. Because he knows how to fight. He was Hexblade. He knew how to fight with a weapon. So like, yeah, make yourself a level 8 fighter. That makes sense to me. So he was, for 3 sessions while they were doing stuff, they were fighters, and they finally like got finished with their mission they were currently on, and they took a break, and then, you know what, we have things we need to tend to. Let's go about our ways. A lot of my campaigns end like this sometimes, where like we take a break from the main group and they split off and do their own things for a while, where I have solo sessions with each one. Well, his solo session was a paladin he met earlier in the thing that was at Asimar. He called him up. He mailed him a letter and said, hey, can I meet you? Can I travel to where you are? And can you train me in the arts of paladin? And so for a whole year, he spent with that dude. And they climbed up onto a high mountain that's in the very northern part of my campaign setting on the continent you guys are currently on, actually, in your game. They climbed up onto that mountain. They spent a whole year up there. He spent a whole year teaching him the ways of the paladin. And he came back down a year later, level 8 paladin. That's how I ruled it. So I think there's tons of ways you can do this if your character like decides in game for a reason that they want to switch classes, or if they decide out of game for a reason they want to play a new character. I'm not really too against it. I think do it, you know? There's always a way to make it cool. There's always a way to role play it out. No one felt like weirded out by that when they came back. I'm like, wait, you're a paladin now? No one went like, what the fuck? Why do you get to just switch classes like that? Because it felt earned. He went away for a whole year. He trained under a paladin. So I don't know. I think there's tons of ways you can do it.
Yeah. As long as it's, I think I get. Yeah. As long as it's within the story and it's story driven and it's within the realms of your world, it's fine. But for me, it's kind of like you're giving up on something before it's blossomed, before it's gotten to the point where you want it to. Like if you want to just stop playing that character and just go on to a new character, like for me, it's kind of like what is it about the character that you've made that doesn't gel with you that you've played for a year?
Yeah. That did happen once with a game I was playing where I had a person who he wanted to be a cleric fighter mix. So he started off as a level 1 cleric. Then he picked 1 point up in fighter, and then I think he made it up to level 4 before he was like, "This is awful. I'm not enjoying." Because a lot of problems with when you multi-class is that you feel kind of inferior to everyone around you. Yes. Because while you're level 2 in 2 classes, they're level 4 in theirs, so they have more to their disposal. And he came to me, he was like, "This is not working. Can we just make me a level 4 cleric?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go for it. You're a level 4 cleric." Because that was a mistake on his part. He tried something and he realized he doesn't want to continue it.
Yeah. See, that makes a lot of sense because he's still playing the same character.
Yeah.
Like
I've never had anyone come to me and tell me they want to completely ditch a character before.
I've had many people do it.
That's kind of crazy.
Many people do it. But I've also had like ridiculous requests too. Like I want to be a pixie. And I want to be a pixie barbarian. And I'm like, wait, what? So you're going to use the weapon the size of a goddamn toothpick and do the same amount of damage that a Dragonborn or Goliath do with a barbarian? What, really? Let me go grab my broadsword here. Let me grab a toothpick, right? And let's see which one does the most damage here.
It's not that I'm against that. It's just that like I'd have to homebrew a pixie race.
Yeah, that too. I mean, there are pixie races out there, but it's ridiculous requests like that stem from the phrase "It's D&D. You can do what you want." It's those ridiculous requests. But I'm going to change your gear here because I realized that we never finished talking about tabletop.
Fuck, we haven't. Yeah, and we have went a bit over the time here, so we probably need to get back on topic. So, something I want to ask. Because a lot of people ask me this a lot in my comment section. They will always want to know these kind of things. So I want to run it to you. What are some things that irk you on Tabletop Simulator that you wish that they would change so it would be easier to DM?
Easier to DM.
Things that like when you try to do it, it kind of like doesn't work or glitches out. Anything like that. Because I have a few, but not very many. Tabletop runs pretty well for me.
That's what I'm about to say. I'm trying to think here about what it is.
We talked
Like
about
I
the thing
thought,
before with the lighting. You wish they had that.
I wish they had that, but that's just not implemented. Like
Yeah.
you can technically kind of like faux and pseudo do it using the fog of war system.
They're going
But
that
it
way with
doesn't-
it, with Fog of War, yeah.
but it's still that's it right there. The fog of war does not work on 3D assets. That's the biggest thing that I've got. Doesn't
Okay.
work on 3D assets.
Yeah, that
So-
defeats the whole purpose of Tabletop Simulator, really.
Yeah, exactly. So the fog of war works absolutely brilliant on 2D maps. But as soon as you start introducing 3D maps, I think there was a map that I created for you guys. It was the entirety of the Fandelver mines in 3D, and it was brilliant. But I couldn't use the fog of war because the walls were still fucking jutting out of the fog of war, right? And even if you increase the height of that fog of war, it still wouldn't go because your characters wouldn't be at the level of what they should be, like on it. So that definitely irked me. And I think that's one thing that would be great to see is an implementation of 3D assets with the fog of war system.
And I think
This is
there
why
could be a
ended
way
up-
around that. I think you could create a separate Fog of War that was higher, that was blacking them all out, and then go behind with a marker and
Well, I
clear
did-
out the passageways, but the bottom Fog of
Yeah.
War still exist. And as
Yeah,
the
well-
players proceed, you could like manually click and ignore Fog of War on the walls. But that seems really fucking tedious, and they should really just fix it.
Yeah. So what I actually did instead is I actually did hidden. I used the hidden sections instead. So exactly what we talked about previous was that you don't put the battle map out until the characters actually get into battle, but you still have the room. So you don't put the characters and the models on the fight section until they're actually in a fight, but you can still see the room around you. So what I ended up doing, not sure if it was for your guys' Fandelver campaign or if it was another guy's Fandelver campaign, but each section of the room that you went into was a hidden tile. So you created like a 8x8 hidden, and then in the next room it was an 8x8 hidden, and in another room it was a 9x8 hidden and stuff like that. So each room that you went into, you just unhide that area, but you wouldn't put any of the models on. You just drag them on when you needed to, and just have a very small amount of setup time while everyone's kind of like looking at the map, going, "What do I do here? What am I going to do on my turn here? What's going to happen?"
Mhm.
So we got the way around that, but I do think the fog of war system should be revamped for it. Music inside of tabletop as well. Like,
It's
not
kinda
trying to get
trash.
into it. Yeah, it is. It's completely trash. I spent like a good evening trying to look for a decent MP3 player or a decent like streaming player inside of tabletop.
That's why I stream my
It's not
music
fine.
through Discord, and even that's kind of
Yeah, it doesn't work whatsoever. Like, I don't find it working whatsoever. Unfortunately, the streaming bots like was it Rhythm and stuff like that, it bugs out for me constantly, and I find myself having to minimize tabletop, going to Discord, then typing in a play, and then coming back to Discord, and like those very few moments of having to drop your concentration to focus on doing your music, you miss something. You miss a player doing, "Oh, I want to do this," or a question, or like you come back and you go, "Right, where was I again? How many monsters have I got to control? 16? Oh shit, whose go is it again?" It's that type of stuff. But the initiative trackers inside of tabletop are a bit shite too. Like, people have created an initiative tracker that you can create on the side. Like the one that you've got in your game is great, and it puts a lot of onus onto the players. They pick up the ring, they stick it on that initiative counter and stuff like that. But that initiative counter only goes from 0 to 20. So that means if someone rolls a 26,
you just gotta go above it.
yeah, they're just trying to go above it. Like, and we do know people roll 26s, so it's kind of like great. So how do we do that now? And I've also got a very small one as well, which uses actual symbol. You write the people's name on and you put them in the area, and it's got turn count and stuff. But it's tedious again, having to move everything and stuff like that. Which, where D&D Beyond actually comes in very handy, because their initiative tracker that they've currently got going on in alpha stage is phenomenally good for alpha. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't.
You haven't? So under their encounter section, if you create encounters, if you're subscribed to it, you can actually run the encounter. So you can build the encounter, add what creatures you want to.
You're talking about on D&D Beyond.
Yes, on D&D Beyond. So you can add encounters, which is amazing in itself, right? I don't know the way that you do your monsters inside a tabletop, right? You have monster cards inside a tabletop, and you put them down in certain areas. You have the HP and stuff like that. I don't. I have a piece of paper in front of me. I write down the AC of the creature, the HP of the creature, and that's all I have. On my second screen, I have their stat blocks, and I see what they do, and I'm going through different tabs. D&D Beyond allows you to use the database that they have for monsters, both homebrew and legitimate, and basically click on them to see their stat block open up on the right-hand side in the middle of the initiative tracker. That, for me, is such a big, not only declutter of my D&D DM space for my PC, but also extraordinarily fast and handy if you're like, random encounter, oh, I need to pull up a skeleton. Okay, shit, I need to pull up a skeleton. You just add skeleton into the D&D Beyond page. And
how do you feel about this? About how D&D Beyond is kind of slowly pushing itself into that group? It's slowly taking a chunk out of the Roll20 scene. Because I'm kind of excited about it.
I'm super excited about it because Roll20 has never had the backing of Wizards of the Coast. They've always done it off their own back and stuff like that, and they've been slammed a few times, shut down by legal teams and stuff. For basically for doing what they obviously wanted to do with D&D Beyond, but they never had the ability to do it with Roll20 because Roll20 was sort of like a built up from a single person's own type deal.
And D&D Beyond is technically, I think they're basically owned by Wizards of the Coast. I'm not entirely sure. I think they're like a branch off of it.
Mm-hmm. I love it, and I love the fact that they're doing it. Me and a friend were actually talking about this the other day. Like when they do actually include this encounter feature and the initiative feature, what I'm really hoping that they do, and what I want to see them do, is every single campaign book build in the encounters automatically on purchase with the campaign book.
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
So you go into, like, for example, we go into the Strahd Zampa Temple, and I can see all my counters lined up. And then I can see on D&D Beyond the map of where they are, and then encounter 1 is here, encounter 2 is here, and then you can click on the map, encounter 1, run encounter. Like, that type of
beautiful. Push. Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, that's
I hope they do something like that. I'm excited for it.
I'm so excited for it.
I think D&D Beyond has made things so much simpler to help people get into things. I don't know how, without D&D Beyond, I'm unsure if I would have actually ended up playing on tabletop. I probably would have went with Roll20. Because while Roll20 has a lot of its problems, it has built-in create a character stuff that you can bring into the game and make it easier for players. And without being able to see their character sheets and see stuff, or be able to for them to use it to roll with, I feel like it would have made things way harder on me, and I would have ended up giving up on tabletop.
So the one thing that D&D Beyond is missing for me right now is the DM roller. That's what it's missing for me.
It is coming up. They did mention it. Yeah, in the latest patch notes, they brought up things we're trying to implement soon, and the D&D roller is on there. I want that as well.
Yeah, because the DM roller is something that, because I've always been at two minds, and it changes from table to table, but sometimes I keep my rolls secret, and sometimes I keep my rolls out there. It depends on the table, and it depends on what's going on. But I always roll in tabletop. With Strahd, I roll in tabletop, but in Tomb of Annihilation, I roll outside of tabletop. And it's a story issue for me, because one, with you guys, I want you guys to see my rolls, because I want you guys to see when I hit a natural 20, because it changes the flow of the fight. And you know that I'm being legit throughout the entire thing. But in the other campaign, I don't want to have to kill another player like that. I don't want it, if I roll a natural 20 on the squishiest character, I want to be able to look at it and go, I don't want to do this right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do this right now.
That's a big topic to actually be had, is fudging your rolls as a DM. That's something all DMs... There's definitely purchase to people who don't do that, and they roll in front of their players every time, and that's the campaign that they're going for. And it's a more in your face kind of thing, and I respect that, but I strongly believe that fudging your rolls as a DM is important to some degrees, because you have the ability to control when you roll natural 20s and when you don't.
It's a necessity, but it comes down to the type of DM that you are. If you are a megalomaniac DM, if you are not a trusted DM player, or even a player itself, and you roll and then you get that natural 20 when you need it the most. I've had players get natural 20s when they've needed it the most, and I'm like, I haven't seen your rolls because you've been rolling at your table. Like how did you get? You sure really you got that natural 20 right now? You know, you're on 1 HP. I'm looking at my HP pool for my boss, and he's on like 36 HP. You managed to get a natural 20 and do 40 damage. Like, yeah, okay, sure. But it's necessary. For a DM, it's necessary because you want to punish players in the right places. You want to save players
in the
right places. And you want to basically give that nat 20 at some point in time, because that nat 20 can always be the turning point in battle at some point in time.
And right. I had a player once who he was down to 2 HP. They had a plan, and it was a cool ass fucking plan. It was a really dope plan. And everyone in the party knew, he's like, guys, I have to try this. We have to try. This could turn the tide of this fight. But he has to leave range of a melee creature to do it. And he has 2 HP. He gets hit, he's down. Runs away. I have to roll the attack of opportunity. Oh, what do you know? It's a natural 1. Oh, what do you know?
Yeah,
I think I actually said, I think I didn't say natural 1. That's too unbelievable. I think I said like he rolled a 4.
yeah, exactly that. Because even as a DM, and you're watching all these players create these like amazing scenarios that they want to unfold, and you're in the back of your head going, that's fucking cool.
That's really fucking cool. That's cool. I gotta let you do that.
Yeah, I want to see it happen. I want to see that happen. So you make it happen. But if you roll and then you don't have control of those rolls and it doesn't happen, you get this real deflation at the table of,
and you know the rest of the player that did it is also feeling that, and you're like, damn, that sucks.
Well, yeah, but then you've got like the other end of that spectrum. You've got completely the other end of that spectrum, and there's a perfect example that I've actually got for this. Character in the rafters with a bow and arrow wants to fire an arrow at a staff that is 60 foot away in the clutches of somebody's hands through rafters, and they're going, I need to hit this, and you're like, okay. And you're in the back of your DM head, you're going, this is impossible to do. You can't. It's like,
that's such a minuscule chance of hitting that.
Yeah, exactly. Or for what exactly? And you know yourself, if you fire an arrow at a magical weapon, it's going to do nothing. Like, you know that's going to do something, and the player doesn't know that. But do you want to let the player waste an entire action doing it?
How I typically do it is if my players are doing something that they should know isn't doable or isn't feasible, I usually like, hey, do me a favor, roll an intelligence check real quick.
Yeah.
And then they roll it, and I'm like, and they're like 3, and I'm like, no, never mind, your plan's foolproof. I'm still getting my point across, even if they roll low. But if they roll high, I'm like, you know for certain that this is not how it works, and it's not how you want it to work, and it's not going to work the way you want it to work.
Yeah.
That's usually what I do.
I'm going to go back to tabletop, because we keep verging away from tabletop.
We do. I actually just opened tabletop because I wanted to show off a bit.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So I've actually taken... I took a table called Drugo's Complete D&D table, and I basically utilized that for what I wanted. And the reason why I took that was because it had the largest map space for me. Now, one thing that I love about your table is the ability to spawn in a map on top of that table at any given point.
Oh yeah, this thing?
Yeah, so I've seen a couple of things like this, and I've never actually gotten it to work. So basically, because you're on podcast, aren't you? So you basically click a button, and it just pops the map onto the screen. Yep. And you can program that pretty much any shape you want. You just need an image, and you basically press the button, and it instantly spawns the map up onto the screen. It is
very finicky when it comes to actual like battle maps. I don't know if I have any saved, which I don't, for that very reason.
So the way that I always do it is I have to find the battle map beforehand, and I upload it to my cloud storage, and then I go to...
yeah, that's the same way I do it.
Yeah, I spawn in the board, and then I put the image on the board, and I basically then project the grid map on top of the board.
Yep.
Right?
I'm doing it right
now. That requires a lot of prep. It requires a lot of prep. But here's one of the most beautiful things about tabletop. Is that because it is community run and because there's workshops for all of this, and one of the main reasons why during lockdown I decided not to do my main campaign, which is the one that I run with all my friends, which is the Dragon Riders of Vord, which is a complete homebrew campaign, and I went books instead. It's because Tabletop had prepped, or some genius fucking person out there had prepped the entirety of most of the books that I wanted to run in a D&D table. So all of the maps for
I've seen those before.
All the maps for Curse of Strahd are in one place. All the maps for Tomb of Annihilation are in one place. All the models for Tomb of Annihilation, all the models for Curse of Strahd, all the information for Curse of Strahd, they're all in one set place. People have even gone to the extent of creating a table modeled after Curse of Strahd. So they've got like the Svalich Woods behind you and the fog on top of the table and stuff like that. And all you literally need to do is download it and then run. Like, that is literally all you need to do. So that's one of the most beautiful things that I found about Tabletop, that I was like, yeah, it has to do this. And I purchased Tabletop purely because I wanted to play tabletop games with my friends, not realizing that it could be used for D&D. It's only when I started looking at the 3D models when I was like, hey, this could be used for D&D. So
my first thing was I was fucking around with Tabletop one day, and I went to like I think it was components, and then go to figurines, and I saw these things, and I went, huh, wait a minute. And I go to this, and I'm like, wait a minute.
That's exactly the same thing I did. I went to the heroes, and I saw that they were animated, and I was like, holy crap, this could work.
I can play D&D on this.
And I started using those models, and then I was like, well, hang on a second. I managed to get models into this game, and then I found the entire package of the monster manual in a bag. And I was like,
D&D Miniatures 5e is fucking... Without this, I wouldn't be able to play Tabletop.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's the one that I've got as well. It's phenomenal. It's so good. It's just the ability to bring it all in. Though I must say, from a technical standpoint, you have to run Tabletop on an SSD. You have to. The loading times on the HDD for that bag, bear in mind you're loading up over 1,500 3D assets in one
Have you ever loaded the actual table?
Yeah, it takes me like hours to do.
Years.
Yeah, so what I actually had to do, I had to actually put them all in a bag at one point in time, I think at some point in time I had to do that. So I had to go onto the table, drag them all, put them into one big infinity bag.
I did that once, and then I decided that was stupid, and I never did it again. And now whenever I need something, I just go to expand, and then I search it. Like, I need a skeleton.
Yeah. You see, I've got the bag on my D&D table that has all of the miniatures on it, and I basically load it up every now and then when I lose models out and stuff like that. Because whenever I go to that, sometimes it bugs out. There's a lot of pages that bug out on them.
I'm gonna load this just because I want to, but it's probably gonna end up breaking.
One of the other things that I love about Tabletop as well is for those that love Hero Forge and being able to create their own models, is importing those models onto your own table.
Yeah, being able to like go to Hero Forge and make your character and then bring it to life on Tabletop Simulator is one of the coolest fucking things ever. Mm-hmm. So I need to make a video on how to do that. Actually, I haven't made a video on my
there's one or two
on my channel on how to do that yet.
There's one or two videos out there that do it, and for those people that don't know yet, you can actually have color added to your minions now as well, or color added to your creatures on Hero Forge. You can actually bring that into Tabletop.
You have to subscribe to it though, right? On Hero Forge.
Yeah, you do, but it's well worth it, because you have to remember as well that those models will actually be delivered to your house. You can have physical models of those too, which is what we used to do until we got Tabletop.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Back when things were real and COVID wasn't a mess. This thing takes forever to load. I don't know if you can see this.
I can see it, yeah. It's just taking its time to load. But what I do on my table, actually, to give the sense of playability, and I think it's in the Strahd table at the moment, is that these models that you actually get from Hero Forge, they're fucking huge. They're absolutely massive. So what I do is I create large ones, big enough to fit at the table that you sat on, and make it look like the player character.
I saw that. That's really cool, actually.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's really nice because you've got people sat in their seats, almost as if they're sat in their virtual seat and stuff like that, which is great. The one thing that I want to try, on tabletop at some point in time is play a D&D campaign in virtual reality.
I don't know, because I've never actually got into VR very much, so I don't know how much of a difference that would make. But it probably would make a bit of a difference.
So what you can do in tabletop, you can change the camera, right? You've got your third person camera, you've got your first person camera, and you've got your bird's eye camera, right? So if you take your first person camera and control it with VR, you can technically put your camera inside of your model's head, right? So
That
then you're in
sounds like an
virtual
experience, John.
Yeah, it is. I've done it once or twice, and I've kind of like looked up at the dragons and stuff like that, and it is something to behold. It gives you a real sense of immersion. It does, but it doesn't really work because as soon as you move the camera, you gotta move your model, and then you gotta go back into stuff like that. So what I would like is something like a sticky camera that can stick inside of a model. So when you move the camera, the model moves with you.
That would be kind of insane. I think that's almost asking too much of tabletop, though.
Oh yeah, completely. I completely think. I mean, it's possible to do, and even in virtual reality, it's kind of like fun to do. But my gosh,
They added
it's
a lot
definitely a
more.
difference. Yeah, they've added texture models as well. The person who created these bags said that they were adding textured models as they were going through, and they were also adding creatures in from Xanathars and stuff like that as well. It's gonna be like
Yeah, because like when I first got this, it was just this board.
Mhm.
Now there's a whole board over here and over here. It's just kind of insane.
Yeah, they've got flying dragons too, which is nice because you can create states out of them. States are something that I thought would be difficult, but they're actually very easy. Literally,
Yeah, states
highlight
are
right
super
there.
easy.
Yeah.
I should be able to make one like right now, actually.
What's the thing that you like about tabletop? Like, what do you like about tabletop for D&D?
There you go. And now you just gotta switch between the two states. That's how it is to make states, everybody. I'm not making a video on it now. There you go. Just showed the entire world how to make states. If you made it this far in the tutorial in the podcast, you got to see how to make states. That's tough. I don't know. What I like about tabletop is what you're asking me.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing that you like about it?
I think the best thing I like about it is the immersion value. You feel so much more in the situation when you can look down at a board and you can see your figure there. Like it's the closest thing to playing in IRL. You know, it's the closest thing to playing in real life.
I think that's the bit. That's the bit for me as well. That's the nail on the head for me. It was the closest that we could get when we were starting off with, with the start of lockdown and stuff like that. Was the closest thing that I could get to being at the table with my friends. That was the biggest thing. It was like, even in this virtual space, even though we're talking on Zoom and stuff like that, we're still sharing a table.
Yeah, we're still at this table. There's still miniatures in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you got like your webcams on, you might as well be in person. Nothing's different, you know.
Exactly, and that's what the connection was. And that's what Roll20 kind of missed out on for me, was that feeling of sat at a table
Fantasy
instead
Ground.
of looking at it.
Fantasy Ground was the other group. Application.
Not tried Fantasy Ground.
It's very similar to Roll20. I've only played with it a little bit though.
Yeah, so ones that I've tried, right? I've tried Roll20, I've tried Tabletop Simulator, and when we went into lockdown first, Discord for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked the same way as Roll20. So what we had was somebody basically sharing a screen like you're doing here, and she created all of the maps on Photoshop. And then she'd share her Photoshop screen, and then basically move the different layers, what our characters and monsters were, around the Photoshop layers.
That's so much work.
Yeah, and that. And I was like, this was when I was looking into tabletop, and I messaged her, and I was like, you should have a look at this, because it's a lot of work that you're currently doing. You're not only creating a campaign and stories and NPCs, from scratch basically, but now you're also having to do all of the technical aspects too that you don't necessarily do when you're real at the table. So look into this program, and I think she looked into it and she was like, yeah, I don't understand it. I don't get it. That doesn't make sense to me. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
Some people just it's too much, and then like for things that are like photoshopping in general is too much for me. So like the fact,
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah,
for some
so
people, their brains aren't wired like that, you know.
the only way that I would not use tabletop is if D&D Beyond got the same features.
It's gonna come down to how D&D Beyond does it. If they do it like
D&D,
Roll20, I probably will stick to using tabletop. I'll probably bring the encounter thing.
Yeah.
And I'll probably use that, but I probably won't use the actual like maps and stuff. I'll keep using tabletop.
yeah, if D&D Beyond give the function of adding 3D models, 2D maps and 3D maps into their system with the ability to look at the encounter maps and stuff like that as well and be able to move everything the same way as tabletop does, I'd leave tabletop in the dust. I would. I really, really would. Because the functionality of just having it all on one page for me
That's
as a
fair.
DM, just like it's so much better. Purely because, like, as a DM, like, everything is usually behind your screen. Like, you have a screen, and anyone who's seen who's seen a screen, you have all of the key information, the key points on the back of your screen that you need. There's
That's
even, like,
probably the
cursor
biggest problem with tabletop is like I don't have everything behind one screen. I am constantly jumping to like a web browser with D&D Beyond in front of it, and then back to tabletop, and then I have my stuff with my monsters, and I have to come back out and I have to look at the web browser I've opened for this certain spell that the party's cast. I am jumping everywhere.
Yeah, which is what D&D Beyond is currently trying to solve, because you can see everything in just the one browser, which is fantastic.
Oh, it's green. That's why it's not going to show up. Damn. It's a little sticky note. I have a couple of them over to the left of me, and it's just the perceptions of all of my players. It's the actual perceptions of all my players.
You see, the way I do that is on my second screen on my right-hand side is I actually open and pin every single character from the campaigns. So I open up everybody's character sheets and then I pin them, because one thing that I love about D&D Beyond as well is the ability to sneakily take something from a player's inventory or add something from a player's inventory. So the way that it's meant to work, right, is that if an NPC does steal from a player, that player doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you roll behind the screen, right? And if you roll, say, for example, a 26 sleight of hand, then you know as a DM you've reached into that person's pocket past their passive perception, and they don't see or feel a thing. They've taken something.
Mm-hmm.
So why tell the player? Just reach into their D&D Beyond inventory and take what you want. And if they go, hey, guys, I swear I had this on my D&D Beyond page, then you can go, you just looked into your bag and realized that it's missing. And then they're like, wait, what? What the actual fuck is going on now? Like,
who the fuck just stole from me?
Yeah, exactly.
And they flash back to that guy who bumped into them an hour ago.
Yeah, or 3 or 4 sessions ago, and they're like, oh, shit. That type of stuff.
I've done that before, but I typically always make sure it's never anything of too importance.
Yeah. But unless it's accidentally important, like, they got a stick turned out to be the one of the secrets or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't know.
Yeah. So, or vice versa. Like they pick up something that is mundane to their eyes, but you add into their inventory something, groundbreaking, something bigger than what they thought of. Like the same thing, they pick up a stick, then it's actually a wand of fireball or something like that, or a wand of firebolt. Something along the lines of that. Or even just mundane items, being able to add rocks into people's inventories and being able to inventory check them too. Players that say they have 500 gold and you look in, they've only got 300, and you're like, oh, hang on a sec, you got 300 there. How are you paying for this?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. It's not to say that I don't trust my players. I trust my players. But there's reason, but
there's trusting and then there's keeping someone honest.
Yeah.
That's usually how I keep it.
There's a suspension of disbelief that I need to have that your character has X amount of stuff. they have to have this. Like, for example, there's spells and stuff like that, or like spell slots that characters don't have or should have. And they're like, no, I'm going to cast this using this. And I'm like, wait, you can do that? What? Let me just check here.
Yeah, I'm always back checking my players. And I expect them to do the same for me, when I'm like there was a situation later, a couple weeks back, where I was using the disengage action, bonus action on these drow they were fighting. They were disengaging and kind of moving around. And in my head, what I thought, disengage gave you 30 feet of movement. It doesn't. It just allows you to get away. You still only have 30 feet of movement, or however much movement a drow has, which is like 35. Yeah. But in my head, I thought they were getting an additional set of movement. So that's how I was moving it. And one of my players went, "Why are you moving them so far?" And I'm like, "Disengage." And they're like, "No, you don't get extra movement." And I'm like, "What?" I had to go back and I'm like, "All right, hold on. Let's reword all this. Hold on." Keep me honest too. Not everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing about for those people that play Magic the Gathering as well, I don't know if you play Magic the Gathering.
Oh, we can't get into that. We're cutting it here.
The wording on the game is key. It's the same for D&D as well. The wording on spells, the wording on abilities, it's the words that they use. Like, for example, you may, you see, you hear, you sense, that type of thing. I think there was a spell the other day that we saw, Firebolt, I think it was, the cantrip, right? Mm-hmm. Just says a creature within range. That's what it says. Firebolt says, you hurl a fiery bolt at a creature within range. And the range is 30 or 60 feet, right? Mm-hmm. So does that mean, does it go over walls? Does it go past walls? Does it go through walls? It's a creature within range of the fireball. Doesn't say you have to see them. Doesn't say you have to sense them. So then, what rule does it follow? So then you have to backtrack over the PHB and the DMG and see the line of sight rules. If you have line of sight, do you get to see them? But then, things like Magic Missile state that they automatically hit and they automatically go around walls. So you have to assume that Fireball takes the same precedence. If it does automatically hit, then it will say it automatically hits. So it's the words.
It's a lot of weird wording stuff. And people say
you have to keep people right.
There are people I know who swear on everything that the DM is not necessary. The DM's guidance is not needed because of things like that. Because they're like the 5th edition is so well worded that the DM no longer needs his input, and that it doesn't come down to there's no DM discretion whatsoever. I'm just sitting here me and you just had a discussion. You just brought up the fact that Firebolt may or may not be able to get shot around walls because of how it's worded in the book. When we both sit here and know it probably doesn't go around walls.
No, definitely doesn't go around walls. Definitely doesn't go around
through walls or anything of the sort. You need to have sightline. It needs to be a direct, can't be a pillar in front of you or a tower or something. You need to actually be able to see it.
So that is something that
there's a lot of spells that are like that.
That is something that I do actually want them to include in the books, right? It's things like this. A lot of people will take them as raw. A lot of people will take them as, no, that spell says this. I can do this. But what they don't include in that spell is the reference to rules that they should also be looking at. 100%. Perfect example is this Fireball rule, right? It says that it can go hurl across the map 60 feet at anything that's within range. But that contradicts the line of sight rules. So in that Fireball spell, it should also read, see page X of PHB line of sight.
It would definitely help.
Because it means that you can jump to reference points and be like, okay, this ruling references this ruling, which ties into this ruling, and everything. But it does mean mapping out all of the rules. I think then the DM thing might be true.
Okay.
But at the same time, I don't think so.
All right, so we need to end this soon, but I do have one more thing I want to I want to talk to you about, and that's players taking notes.
Oh my god, I wish they fucking would. Really do.
So, I've been a DM for a pretty long time now. I've DM'd for almost a decade at this point. Though I'd rather say 5 years has been really me DMing, and the other 5 was me just going what the fuck am I doing? So, I'd only really count 5 of that. But the point that I'm trying to say is, in all the time I've DM'd, I have just recently gotten into a game where people were taking notes, and that was an R game with
Really?
Curse of Strahd.
So tell me, what was the difference between the games that you've been playing with notes and without?
So I've always been the DM. Like I said, me and you coming into my life is really the first time I've ever been able to be a player. So it was a bit different, but I always hated the fact that my players never remembered anything, and they always like expected me to just kind of tell them what their character should know or what their character should remember.
So that's also one of my biggest gripes at the table is that people just expect the story to pick up exactly where they left off, as if they don't remember anything. I mean, they're an active participant in the story. Like when we're sat at our tables and stuff like that, I'm not expecting. In fact, I hate it when people are on their phone. Like if they're on their phone looking at social media and stuff like that, they're not invested and they could miss key parts of information. So why be even involved? So taking notes is brilliant because there's a moment where something the DM can reference 3 months down the line can trigger somebody's memory because they've written it down somewhere. Then they go, wait. Then they go back to their notes and they look it up. Now it's not something new. This is something that I got from Critical Role, and I watched.
You see them they're taking
literally
constant notes. They have books on books. They
Exactly.
every word that Matt is spitting, they're writing, and it makes me so jealous of those of a DM. I want players that care that much about my random NPC named Joel.
Yeah, exactly. Because that random NPC named Joel could be polymorphed into someone's fucking mother.
And here's I just recently, like last night, I finally put my foot down with it, and then like so. They wasn't tasked with killing Xanathar, so they met a goblin fortress, kind of like a goblin encampment in the Underdark that they're at. They talked with the leader of the goblins. His name is Azrock. They talked to him. They knew his name. They met him. They had a personal bargain. He said, "Hey, if you want to make a deal with me, if you can go kill Xanathar, I'll aid you in what you're trying to do. I'll give you information on what you're trying to locate, the item they're trying to locate." So flash forward, it's been like 15 sessions or something like that. It's been a long time. They didn't agree to that. They said, "Okay, we'll consider it." They killed Xanathar. They didn't do it because of him. They did it because of the auction and because of everything that was going on. But they did do it. So the cleric Balthazar is like, "I'm gonna send a message to the leader of the goblins." I'm like, "Okay, cool. What's his name?" Because you need his name. And he was like, well, Balthazar would know it. I'm like, "Yeah. So do you know it?"
Yep.
And like they spent like 10 minutes going like, "What the fuck is that goblin saying?"
Exactly, but that's the whole point. It's the whole. That's what gets me as well. It's the whole point. You have to remember the NPCs' names, and you have to be invested in what's going on. I mean, there was a time.
If you're not invested, why should the DM be invested? Why should he create a story like that, where there's like hints and things coming on like throughout the whole campaign? Why shouldn't he just make just a very basic, linear, boring story if you're not going to care about it?
Now, I understand, and I get this as well, because it's part and parcel with the way that I play too, is that I do retain a lot of information. Names and stuff like that, I don't retain. Like, I don't retain names, which is why I do write down notes for names and stuff like that and what they do. But information that I'm like, wait, that item does this, then it's potential that there is potential for it to do this. Perfect example of that is that our Dragon Heist game that we're playing, one of the rings turned out to be a ring of shielding, right? Which means that the person's soul, whoever's wearing it at the time, their person's soul gets transferred into the ring. And I was like, well, wait a minute, that was on the ring of this guy. He's fucking in that. No, there's no question about it. He's fucking in it. So you bring that up in game, like, and then you get the chance to then spit out that guy's name again. So you're like, what was his name? Look at the notes. This guy is in this ring. Like, yeah, he's in this ring.
He's fucking in there.
He's gonna be in there. Like,
there's no way he's not, right? Like, totally.
There's no way he's not. And if he's not in there, it's somebody fucking else. And if it's someone else, then who the fuck is it? I mean, but you don't get to those points if you don't write down the notes. Like, the ring itself is a note. The item is a note, and you look about what it does. If you don't understand what it does, then you don't get the extra parts of the story and the bits that the DM. And this is the thing as well, because you do this. DMs do this. They sit behind their notes, giggling the fuck out of themselves, going, "I hope to God they find this because this is great.
Yeah.
Like this ties to this, this ties to this, this ties to this." And
Like
they
totally,
find it.
yeah. Everything's tied, and we're just like, oh, I can't wait till they pull one of those threads, and they never pull a thread because they don't write their notes down.
Exactly that. And one of the only reasons why Critical Role works the way the Critical Role does is because it's not just Matt that drives that story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Matt that drives that story.
It's the players.
The players drive that story, and Matt's literally agreed to this 24/7. He's literally just the referee. The players make their story.
Yep.
The players make everything. He creates the world, but the people inside that world is what makes the story. All of the characters' backstories tie into the main story of the world in some way, shape, or form, which is Matt's doing. That is Matt's doing. But at the same time, it's not Matt's content.
No,
it's all of their content.
It's the players' content, and it's partly because because there needs to be a middle ground where both the players and the DM meet. And if you just expect the DM to kind of just be there and tell you everything and let you just kind of chill and like, oh, this is D&D, time for D&D. I guess I need to just sit here with my character sheet open and just do nothing for like 4 hours and until I think of an idea that I can be cool at. Like that's very rude to your DM.
Yeah. So
be a part of the fucking story with him, you know?
Yeah, there's 2 moments in Critical Role that made me realize this. One was recent, one was ages ago. The first one where I realized that my players should be doing better, and that was the exact thought that I had, was the moment where they're in, I can't remember what the castle was called, but they were in the King and Queen's castle in the first campaign, and they were all going towards a dinner. And just in passing conversation, Matt was having an NPC to NPC talk, and he handed off a letter, and he said, in front of Percy, "Give this to Mr. and Mrs. Briarwood."
Yep.
And then just walked off and did nothing else. And then in the background, you kind of saw Taliesin kind of like look and then go, wait. And then you saw him then pick up pieces of paper and then start scrolling through it and then kind of looked at it, closed them, and then literally ran after that same NPC and said, did you say Mr. and Mrs. Briarwood? And then as a watcher, and as other players, you're going, what's going on here? This is out of the blue. This is different. What's going on here? The second moment, right? And this is pure note-taking, right? This is going to be spoilers. So spoilers.
Spoiler warning. Is it campaign 1 or 2?
This is 2.
All right, campaign 2 spoiler warning for Critical Role. Please beware. I don't know how far into this is or how far you are into it. Just be aware this may be a spoiler to you.
They went to an island where they met a woman with no leg.
I knew this was going to be it. This is a really deep spoiler for campaign critical.
It's a massive spoiler.
This is like episode 100 something. If you're episode 34, don't just click off. Yeah. This is our last topic anyways. Thank you for coming.
Skip forward, but get to the gist of this is that note-taking is vitally important.
Note-taking is very important. It means a lot to your DM if you do it. It makes them want to do more if they know you're taking notes.
And it also scares the shit out of them because they know that you remember shit.
Yeah. Because now they have to actually make a story that makes sense.
Yeah, you can point them out their plot holes and then they can go,
fuck.
Yeah.
But also don't do that in the campaign. Because like a DM, not all DMs are storytellers. All right. They're doing their best.
Yeah.
Plot holes are going to happen. But anyways,
so if they hadn't have taken notes, if they hadn't have known prior as well, if they hadn't have taken notes and stuff like that, then they would never have found out who that is. But you also have to remember that their community, the crypt community, they take notes. There's a whole wiki page of notes for them.
I think that's also partly why the players take notes, is because they're scared that the community is going to get mad at them if they don't notice something.
Yeah, quite
How'd you
possible.
not know that was Kiki's mom?
Yeah,
Spoilers.
exactly.
Spoilers.
I was trying to skirt around the issue. You just went balls deep. Yeah, and I
I
think it was
warned them. They were warned.
during the session. It wasn't even Marisha that found out. It was
It was
Sam and Liam,
Sam.
because Sam looked at his phone and saw the stream, and everyone was like, "That's Kiki's mom," and he went, and then text Liam, was like, everyone on the stream saying it's Kiki's mom, and then Liam was like,
Oh, it is? Yeah. Missing leg.
yeah. And then I think it got to Marisha through Chinese whispers, and then Marisha kind of went like, "What? Wait, how do I do this? How can I do this and not fucking? How can I do this and not meta? What can I do?" And then she started all these like background questions and stuff like that, and getting to know the character. And then she kind of came to the realization that holy shit, it is her. Like it's that type of.
That's so cool, though, that he held that for that many years. That Matt did that for that many years. He went from one character to a whole new character, a whole new setting. He finally dropped that bomb.
But you have to also think as well. It's how many iterations of that bomb did it go through to land there? Like, I can guarantee you that Kiki's mom was in campaign with some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily on that island, but somewhere else. If the characters had gone a left turn instead of a right turn, they could have ended up in front of Kiki's mom.
Oh yeah, totally.
And like, it's up to the DM where to put these things. So at the same time, it's up to the DM where to put these things. But if you're not paying attention and you're not taking notes, and one of the worst things that I can think of as a player, giving a DM a backstory that's about 3 or 4 pages long, having that DM write shit into the backstory and drop you hints of your backstory and you completely failing to see it. That is one of the biggest insults that I've had as a DM.
There's another insult that's pretty bad too. Maybe not an insult, but it's like it's a thing that irks me as a DM. I sit here and I create backstories. I'm usually with the players when we're creating them. We go back and forth a little bit because they're asking me about my world and I'm giving them answers and stuff. And then, so take my wizard in my current campaign, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say we spent the first year, his backstory not even being written down. So whenever I needed to pluck from it, whenever I wanted to create something, I'd have to go, I don't know his father's name because we didn't write it down, and I'm bad at remembering things. That's why I always write things down, but I can't go to his backstory and look at it because his backstory's empty on D&D Beyond.
So this is the interesting thing that I did about Strahd, is that there's no character backstories that influence the main story.
It's nice.
And this is the first campaign that I've done because Strahd takes you to a pocket dimension where your family is not there. So why should you bring your family? It's completely separate. He's brought you over here because he sees you as an adventurer that could potentially end his lineage and stop him from this reoccurring nightmare. Why would he bring your family and torture you even further? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
All right, we need to end this. I keep looking at the timer and like realizing we went far over the length we need to go.
Yes. Biggest insult to a DM, creating backstories that you've obviously spent time on. You've obviously thought a lot on, and you've created a lovely melodramatic weave of story and arc and stuff like that. Then to palm it off to your DM for him to read, or her to read it for hours, to then incorporate into the main story, and then drop you hints for you to basically not even recognize or even ignore them.
So pay attention.
Like, why do I bother?
What have we learned today? Pay attention. Take notes. Put your backstory in a place where the DM can get a hold of it. Make sure you send it to them in some kind of format. I'm not talking through a Discord or a message, because that shit gets lost. You're going to keep talking. It's gone, you know? Put it somewhere the DM, like, hand it to him. Let him have it so he can do what he wants to do with it. Unless you don't want the DM to do anything with it, and then, of course, fuck it.
D&D Beyond has a backstory function that in a campaign setting only the DM is allowed to access. So use that, because the DM can click on your character page. And
it's unlimited. There's unlimited space in that thing. I've never seen it get capped out. I've seen some really long backstories.
Mm-hmm.
Just put it there.
Yeah, we've also learned that your platform is yours to use. We prefer tabletop, obviously. But.
Yeah. This is no shame to people who use Roll20. I understand the reason, especially if you grew up with it. Like if you've been Roll20 for all these years, don't switch to tabletop.
Roll20 has some lovely bells and whistles on it. Like it does have some lovely bells and whistles.
That's
on
kind
it,
of probably the biggest downfall to tabletop is it misses a lot of bells and whistles.
Yeah. Yeah, DMs are shits and amazing at the same time. Players are shits and amazing at the same time.
Players are definitely shit, but amazing at the same time.
Yeah.
But thanks everybody who showed up. I know this is a lot longer. I'm probably going to end up having to cut and edit this a lot.
But believe me when I say we can chat for another 3 hours.
We definitely could, and we definitely will. I'm gonna have to bring you back for another episode of something completely different, like that conversation we were having before the recording. Like, that could be a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna end it here. Thanks for coming, John.
That's no problem. Call me anytime. I'm always happy to chat.
You guys have a good one.